When Connor told me I was too ugly for his promotion party, I smiled and wished him luck. 3 months later, I walked into that same party as Mrs. Rodriguez, wife of his new regional director. The look on his face when he realized his career was now in my husband's hands. Priceless. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. The real story began 6 months earlier, on a rainy Tuesday morning in our Hawthorne neighborhood kitchen. I was stirring honey into my coffee when Connor emerged from our bedroom, straightening his tie with the precision of a man who believed his appearance could compensate for his character. "The promotion party is next Friday," he announced, not looking at me as he grabbed his travel mug. "It's at the Meridian Hotel, black tie event." I felt a flutter of excitement. After 3 years of marriage, this would be the first company event he'd invited me to attend. Should I pick up something new to wear? Maybe that navy dress we saw at Actually, Connor interrupted, his tone shifting to that familiar casual cruelty he'd perfected over the years. "I think it's better if I go alone this time." The honey spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "Alone?" He finally looked at me then, his eyes scanning my face with the detached assessment of someone evaluating livestock. "Nat, you're beautiful to me, obviously, but these corporate events, they're about image. The other guys will have their wives there, and let's be honest, you're not exactly polished enough for this crowd." The words hit like ice water. I set down my coffee with trembling fingers. "What do you mean by polished?" Connor sighed, as if explaining was an inconvenience. "You work at a tiny design firm in Southeast. You shop at Target, you don't get your hair done professionally. These women," he gestured vaguely. "They're different, sophisticated. I need to make the right impression if I want this VP position. So I'm an embarrassment." "Don't be dramatic." He moved toward me and placed his hands on my shoulders with practiced affection. "You're perfect for our life here. But that life and this promotion are two different worlds." I stared at him, searching for any sign that he realized what he'd just. Instead, he kissed my forehead and grabbed his keys. "I'll probably be late tonight. Client dinner." After the door closed, I stood in our kitchen for 20 minutes, staring at my reflection in the black coffee. My shoulder-length brown hair was natural, no expensive highlights. My skin was clear but not professionally maintained. I wore a simple cardigan over jeans, clothes that felt comfortable and authentic but apparently weren't enough. That afternoon at Cascade Creative, my small marketing firm in the heart of Southeast Portland, I found myself studying my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Vanessa Kim found me there during our lunch break, applying lipstick with unusual intensity. "Everything okay?" she asked, settling against the counter. Vanessa had been my closest friend since college, and now worked as a corporate lawyer downtown. She had the polished look Connor apparently coveted. Sharp suits, perfect makeup, an expensive haircut that never seemed to have a strand out of place. "Connor's promotion party is Friday," I said, capping the lipstick. "He's going alone." Vanessa's reflection frowned in the mirror. "Why?" I repeated Connor's words, watching my friend's expression grow darker with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's not how a husband talks about his wife," she said finally. "Maybe he's right though. Maybe I don't fit into that world." Vanessa turned to face me directly. "Natalie, you're a talented graphic designer. You're kind, intelligent, and genuinely beautiful. If Connor can't see that, or worse, if he sees it but doesn't want his colleagues to benefit from your presence, that says everything about him and nothing about you." I wanted to believe her, but Connor's words had lodged themselves deep. That evening, when he came home smelling like expensive wine and someone else's perfume, I didn't ask about the client dinner. I'd learned that questioning Connor's stories only led to lectures about trust and paranoia. The night of the promotion party, I stayed home and worked on a freelance project while Connor got ready. He emerged from our bedroom looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine, charcoal suit, silver cufflinks, hair styled with product that cost more than my monthly coffee budget. "How do I look?" he asked, adjusting his collar in our hallway mirror. "Perfect," I said, and meant it. He did look perfect, which somehow made everything worse. "Don't wait up. These things run late. And there's an after party at Tyler's place." Tyler Brooks was Connor's closest friend from work. Another ambitious account manager, who treated marriage like a networking opportunity. His wife Stephanie looked like she'd walked off a magazine cover and spoke about charity galas, the way other people discussed grocery shopping. "Have fun," I managed. After Connor left, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled onto our couch with my laptop. But instead of working on the freelance project, I found myself scrolling through the Northwest Financial Group's website, studying photos from past company events. The images showed exactly what Connor had described: polished couples in elegant venues, women with professional styling and expensive dresses, men in perfectly tailored suits, networking with champagne glasses. I closed the laptop and went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. Instead, I lay in our shared bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment from our relationship. When Connor had made me feel small, the comments about my clothes, my job, my friends, my appearance, all delivered with just enough affection to seem loving rather than cruel. Connor came home after 2 in the morning, stumbling slightly as he undressed in the dark. The smell of alcohol and unfamiliar perfume was stronger now, but I pretended to be asleep. In the morning he was hungover and uncommunicative, mentioning only that the party had gone well and he'd made good connections. "Did you get the promotion?" I asked over coffee. "Not announced yet, but I think I made the right impression." 3 days later, Connor burst through our front door with news. He'd gotten the promotion, but there was a twist. Northwest Financial Group had been acquired by Rodriguez Holdings, a luxury real estate development company. Connor's new title came with a new boss, Marcus Rodriguez himself, who was relocating from California to oversee the Pacific Northwest expansion. "This is huge, Nat," Connor said, pacing our living room with manic energy. "Rodriguez is worth millions. Self-made guy started with nothing and built an empire. If I can impress him, this could be the beginning of something incredible." I watched my husband's excitement with a mixture of happiness and resignation. His success was something to celebrate, but I understood that my role in his new world would be even smaller than before. The next few weeks brought changes to our routine. Connor worked longer hours, attended more networking events, and spoke constantly about making the right impression on Marcus Rodriguez. He bought new suits, upgraded his car, and started talking about moving to a more prestigious neighborhood. "Rodriguez is big on family values," Connor mentioned one evening while checking his reflection before another work dinner. "Apparently he's recently married himself. Some kind of whirlwind romance." "That's nice," I said, not looking up from my design work. "The point is, image matters even more now. Rodriguez comes from old money, despite the self-made story. His wife is apparently stunning, former model or something, the whole package." I felt the familiar sting but said nothing. Connor's message was clear enough. 2 weeks after the acquisition, I was having lunch with Vanessa at a trendy Pearl District restaurant, when she mentioned an interesting coincidence. "You know that Rodriguez Holdings acquisition Connor's so excited about? I've been handling some employment contracts for them. Small world." "Really?" I stirred my soup absently. "Connor's obsessed with impressing the new boss, Marcus Rodriguez. I've met him a few times during negotiations. Seems decent enough, very focused on ethical business practices, which is refreshing." Vanessa paused. "Actually, now that I think about it, he mentioned looking for a graphic designer for some personal projects, marketing materials for a foundation he's starting." Something in my chest flickered. Personal projects, high-end stuff, brand development, website design, print material. "He wants someone with real talent, not just a big agency." Said he'd rather work with someone hungry and creative than established and complacent. The conversation moved on, but Vanessa's words stayed with me. That evening, while Connor prepared for yet another networking dinner, I found myself researching Rodriguez Holdings online. The company's website was sleek and professional, showcasing luxury developments across the West Coast, but it was the bio section that caught my attention. Marcus Rodriguez had indeed built his company from nothing, starting with a single property renovation in college and expanding into a multi-million-dollar empire. The photos showed a man in his early 30s with dark hair and confident eyes, professional but not arrogant, successful but not flashy. What struck me most was a quote in a recent interview: "Business is about people, not just profit. The best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared vision." It was such a contrast to Connor's approach, which seemed focused entirely on climbing ladders and impressing the right people. 3 days later, Vanessa called with an unexpected proposition. "Remember that Rodriguez project I mentioned? He's specifically looking for someone local, someone who understands Portland's aesthetic." I might have mentioned your name. My heart jumped. "Vanessa, I can't." Connor would, what? Be proud that his wife is talented enough to work with his new boss? Or would he be threatened that you're more than just arm candy he's ashamed of? The question hung between us like a challenge. "Marcus wants to see portfolios by Friday. No commitment, just a look at your work. What could it hurt?" That night, while Connor was at his latest networking event, I spread my design portfolio across our dining room table. Years of work stared back at me: logos for local businesses, branding packages for startups, website designs for nonprofits. It was good work, creative and thoughtful, but seeing it all together made me realize how much I'd been hiding my light under a bushel. I'd been so focused on making myself smaller to fit Connor's vision of our life that I'd forgotten I had talents worth sharing. By Thursday evening, I'd compiled my best work into a presentation that showcased not just technical skill but creative vision. I included projects that demonstrated my understanding of luxury markets alongside grassroots community work, showing range and adaptability. Friday morning, Vanessa picked me up for the meeting at Rodriguez Holdings' temporary Portland offices in a renovated warehouse in the Pearl District. The space was stunning: exposed brick, soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that filled the room with natural light. Marcus Rodriguez was nothing like what I'd expected. Connor's descriptions had led me to imagine someone intimidating and corporate, but the man who greeted us was warm and immediately put me at ease. He was handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes and a genuine smile that reached all the way to his expression. "Natalie, thank you for coming. Vanessa speaks very highly of your work." We settled into a conference room with my portfolio spread between us. As Marcus reviewed each piece, he asked thoughtful questions about my creative process, my inspiration, and my understanding of brand identity. It was the first time in months someone had been genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. "This is exceptional work," he said, finally closing the portfolio. "You have exactly the aesthetic I'm looking for. Clean but warm, sophisticated but approachable." "Thank you," I managed, still processing that this successful, influential man was praising my ability. "The foundation I'm starting focuses on providing design and creative services to underserved communities. I want the brand to reflect both professionalism and accessibility. Based on what I've seen, I think you'd be perfect for the project." We discussed timeline, budget, and expectation. The compensation he offered was more than I made in 3 months at Cascade Creative, but more than the money, it was the respect in his voice, the way he treated my expertise as valuable, that made my chest warm with forgotten pride. "There's one more thing," Marcus said as we prepared to leave. "I'm hosting a small dinner party next week. Nothing formal, just a chance for key collaborators to meet and discuss the foundation's vision. Would you be interested in attending?" I thought immediately of Connor, of his reaction to my working with his new boss, of his certainty that I didn't belong in sophisticated circles. "I'd love to," I heard myself saying. Walking back to Vanessa's car, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time in years, someone had seen my potential instead of my limitations. "How does it feel to be valued for your actual talents?" Vanessa asked as we drove through downtown Portland. "Strange," I admitted. "Good, strange." That evening, I waited until Connor came home from work to tell him about the meeting. I'd planned to present it as good news: his wife working with his boss, strengthening Connor's position in the company. "You did what?" Connor's face had gone pale. I met with Marcus Rodriguez. He's hired me to design materials for his new foundation. Connor set down his briefcase with deliberate care. You met with my boss, without telling me. Vanessa arranged it. It's a legitimate project, Connor. Good money, prestigious client. That's not the point. Connor's voice had taken on the controlled tone that meant he was furious, but trying not to show it. Do you have any idea how this looks? My wife going behind my back to work with my boss. I'm not going behind your back, I'm working. You're embarrassing me. Connor ran his hands through his hair. Rodriguez probably thinks I can't control my own household, that my wife is so desperate for attention, she'll chase down business meetings. The words hit exactly as intended. That's not what happened, isn't? Connor moved closer, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. You couldn't handle being left out of my work life, so you found a way to insert yourself. It's pathetic, Nat. I felt the familiar shrinking sensation, the impulse to apologize and make everything smooth again. But something had shifted during my meeting with Marcus. For 2 hours I'd been treated as competent and valuable. The contrast was impossible to ignore. The project starts Monday, I said quietly. I've already accepted. Connor stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him recalibrating his approach. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Concern, maybe, that his usual tactics weren't working. Fine, he said finally. But don't expect me to clean up the mess when you're in over your head. That weekend, Connor was distant and cold, speaking to me only when necessary. He spent most of Saturday at Tyler's house, and came home Sunday evening with the announcement that he'd be working late all week. Rodriguez wants to accelerate some projects, he explained, though he didn't meet my eyes. I'll probably miss dinner most nights. Monday morning, I drove to the Rodriguez Holdings offices, with a mixture of excitement and nerve. The project was more extensive than I'd initially understood. Complete brand development, including logo design, website architecture, print materials, and social media guidelines. It was the kind of comprehensive work I'd always dreamed of doing. Marcus had set up a small office space for me within the main workspace, and I was struck again by how different the environment felt from Connor's descriptions of corporate culture. People were collaborative rather than competitive, focused on quality rather than just deadline. How's the first day going? Marcus appeared at my desk around noon, carrying 2 cups of coffee from a local roaster. Really well, thank you for this. I gestured at the workspace, the project materials, the opportunity. Thank you for bringing such talent to. He settled into the chair across from my desk. I have to admit, I'm curious about something. Vanessa mentioned, you're married to Connor Walsh, from our acquisition team. My chest tightened. Yes, he must be proud of your work. This level of design skill doesn't develop overnight. I found myself studying Marcus's expression, looking for signs of judgment or pity. Instead, I saw only genuine interest. Connor and we have different perspectives on work-life balance, I said carefully. Marcus nodded slowly. Some people believe in keeping professional and personal lives separate. I've always thought that was a mistake. The people we love should be our biggest cheerleaders. The comment was casual, but it hit me like a revelation. When was the last time Connor had been my cheerleader? When had he ever celebrated my successes instead of minimizing them? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What about you? I asked, deflecting from my own situation. Vanessa mentioned you're recently married. A shadow passed across Marcus's face. Recently divorced, actually. My ex-wife found my work schedule incompatible with her social calendar. Apparently, building a business from scratch isn't glamorous enough for some people. I'm sorry, don't be. Sometimes, life clears away what isn't working to make room for what will. He stood to leave, then paused. That dinner party I mentioned is Friday night. Nothing fancy. Just takeout and conversation. But I'd love for you to meet the other foundation collaborators. After he left, I sat staring at my computer screen, thinking about his words. Life clearing away what isn't working to make room for what will. That evening, Connor came home after 10, claiming he'd been in meetings all day. He barely glanced at the foundation materials I'd spread across our dining table, showing no interest in the progress I'd made. "How's the project going?" I asked as he microwaved leftover Chinese food. "Fine." He didn't elaborate, and when I tried to share details about my own day, he changed the subject to a basketball game. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Connor left early, came home late, and showed no curiosity about my work, despite it being with his boss. Meanwhile, I found myself looking forward to each day at the Rodriguez Holdings office, with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt about work in years. Marcus was an ideal collaborator, decisive when he needed to be, but open to creative input, and willing to trust my expertise. He treated me like a professional equal, which was such a contrast to Connor's attitude that it felt revolutionary. Friday morning, as I prepared for another day at the office, Connor emerged from our bedroom, dressed in his best suit. "Big day," I asked. "Rodriguez is announcing the new organizational structure. I should be getting my official title and team assignments." For the first time in days, Connor seemed genuinely excited rather than just stressed. I felt a flutter of hope that maybe his mood would improve once his position was secure. "That's wonderful. I'm sure you'll do great." Connor paused at our front door. "About tonight, I'll probably be celebrating with the team." "Don't wait up. Actually, I have plans too." Marcus invited me to a dinner party for the foundation collaborators. Connor's expression shifted instantly. "You're having dinner with my boss?" "It's a work meeting, with multiple people." "It's a dinner party, Nat. At his house." "That's not a work meeting." I felt the familiar defensive flutter but pushed through it. "It's foundation business. I'm part of his team now." Connor studied my face for a long moment, and I could see him calculating his response. Finally, he shook his head. "Just try not to embarrass yourself. These people aren't used to—" He gestured vaguely. "Used to what?" "Nothing. Forget it." He opened the door, then looked back. "Wear something nice." After Connor left, I stood in our hallway feeling the weight of his casual cruelty. Even when acknowledging that I might be around sophisticated people, he couldn't resist implying that I didn't belong. That afternoon at the office, I found myself looking forward to the evening with an intensity that surprised me. It wasn't just about the project or even about proving Connor wrong. It was about spending time with people who valued my contribution. Marcus's house was a beautifully restored Craftsman in the Laurelhurst neighborhood. Warm and inviting rather than ostentatiously impressive. The dinner party turned out to be exactly what he'd promised. Takeout from a local farm-to-table restaurant, casual conversation, and genuine collaboration on the foundation's vision. The other attendees were equally impressive and down-to-earth. A photographer who specialized in community documentation, a writer developing grant applications, and a nonprofit director who would help identify partner organizations. I found myself contributing confidently to discussions about brand strategy and community outreach. My ideas received with enthusiasm and built upon by others. Natalie's design concept perfectly captures what we're trying to achieve. Marcus told the group as we reviewed my preliminary work. Professional enough to attract serious funding, but approachable enough that communities won't feel intimidated. As the evening progressed, I realized I hadn't thought about Connor once. I hadn't monitored my tone, second-guessed my opinions, or worried about taking up too much space in the conversation. I was simply myself, and it was enough. "This has been wonderful," I told Marcus as the other guests prepared to leave. "Thank you for including me. Thank you for bringing such talent and insight to the project." He walked me to the door, and I noticed how comfortable the evening had felt. How natural the conversation had been. "I should probably get home," I said, though I wasn't eager to return to Connor's mood and judgment. "Of course, have a good weekend, and I'll see you Monday." Driving home through Portland's quiet Friday night streets, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. For one evening, I'd been valued for my mind, my creativity, and my contributions. I'd been treated as someone worth listening to. The house was dark when I arrived. Connor apparently still celebrating his promotion. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in our living room, thinking about the contrast between my evening and my marriage. With Marcus and his collaborators, conversation flowed naturally, ideas were shared and built upon. Everyone's expertise was valued. With Connor, I spent so much energy managing his moods and minimizing my own presence that I'd forgotten what it felt like to simply exist without apology. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "How was the dinner party opening?" I typed back, "I'll call you tomorrow." Connor came home after midnight, stumbling slightly as he navigated our dark hallway. I pretended to be asleep, but lay awake thinking about all the ways my life had become smaller since marrying him. The friends I'd stopped seeing because he found them boring, the clothes I'd stopped wearing because he found them inappropriate, the dreams I'd stopped pursuing because he found them unrealistic. In the morning, Connor was hungover and irritable, offering no details about his celebration beyond mentioning that his new title was officially Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it, despite everything. His success was still something to celebrate. "Thanks. It's going to mean longer hours, more travel, higher expectations." He rubbed his temples. "Rodriguez made it clear that this is a prove-yourself position. I'm sure you'll exceed his expectations." Connor looked at me then with something approaching curiosity. "How was your dinner party?" "Productive. We made good progress on the foundation's brand strategy." "Right." Connor's tone suggested he thought foundation work was barely legitimate business. "Well, don't let it distract from your real job." The comment stung, but I didn't respond. Instead, I spent Saturday working on foundation materials, while Connor recovered from his hangover and caught up on sports highlights. Sunday brought an unexpected development. Marcus called to ask if I'd be interested in expanding my role with Rodriguez Holdings beyond just the foundation work. "We're launching a new residential development in Southeast Portland," he explained. "Something designed specifically for creative professionals, artists, writers, designers. I'd love your input on the marketing strategy and visual identity." The project he described was exactly the kind of work I'd always wanted to do: creative, meaningful, and well compensated. It would also mean working more closely with Marcus, which I realized I was looking forward to more than was probably appropriate for a married woman. "I'd be very interested," I told him. "Excellent. We can discuss details Monday. And Natalie, your contributions to the foundation project have been exceptional. I hope you know how valuable your perspective has been." After hanging up, I sat in our kitchen feeling a familiar conflict. Professional excitement warred with marital guilt. Connor had made it clear he disapproved of my work with his boss, but he'd also made it clear he found my regular job insufficiently impressive. There was no version of professional success that would satisfy him, because the problem wasn't my work, it was his need to feel superior. That realization hit me like cold water. Connor didn't want me to succeed because my success threatened his sense of control. Monday morning brought another shift in dynamics. Connor left for work earlier than usual, mentioning that Rodriguez wanted to meet with all the new VPs individually to discuss expectations and goals. "Wish me luck," he said, and for a moment he seemed like the man I'd fallen in love with. Ambitious but uncertain, confident but not arrogant. "You'll do great," I said, and kissed him goodbye with genuine affection. At the Rodriguez Holdings office, I threw myself into the new residential project with enthusiasm that surprised even me. The creative challenge was exactly what I'd been craving: developing a brand identity that would appeal to Portland's creative community while still attracting serious investment. Marcus and I worked closely throughout the morning, bouncing ideas back and forth with an ease that felt natural and energizing. He had excellent instincts for design despite his business background, and I found myself explaining my creative process with more confidence than I'd felt in years. "You have an incredible ability to translate abstract concepts into visual language," Marcus said, as we reviewed my initial sketches. "It's exactly what this project needs." "Thank you. This is the kind of work I've always wanted to do." "What's stopping you from doing more of it?" The question caught me off guard. "I guess, opportunity. Portland's design market is competitive, and most of the high-profile work goes to established agencies, or to people willing to think bigger about their own potential. Something in his tone made me look up from my sketch. Marcus was studying my face with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I have a proposition," he said finally. "Rodriguez Holdings is expanding our in-house creative capability. We need someone to head up a new design division, brand development, marketing materials, visual strategy for all our projects. It would be a significant role, well compensated, with real creative authority." My heart started beating faster. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a career. The question is whether you're ready to take it." The opportunity was everything I'd ever wanted professionally, but accepting it would mean leaving Cascade Creative, taking on much more responsibility, and working directly for my husband's boss on a daily basis. The complications felt overwhelming. "I'd need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course, take your time, but Natalie," Marcus leaned forward slightly, "don't let anyone convince you that you're not capable of extraordinary things. You." The rest of the day passed in a blur of creative work and racing thoughts. By the time I headed home, I'd developed preliminary concepts for the residential project that I was genuinely proud of. But underneath the professional excitement was a growing awareness that accepting Marcus's offer would fundamentally change my life. Connor was already home when I arrived, sitting at our kitchen table with a glass of whiskey and an expression I couldn't read. "How was your meeting with Rodrigue?" I asked. "Interesting." Connor's tone was carefully neutral. He had some feedback about my performance so far. "What kind of feedback?" Connor took a long sip of whiskey before answering. "Apparently some of my new colleagues have concerns about my collaborative style. Rodriguez suggested I might benefit from being more inclusive in my approach." "That sounds like constructive advice, does it?" Connor's eyes found mine, because it felt like criticism, like someone's been telling him I'm difficult to work with. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "Why would you think that?" "Just seems coincidental that my wife starts working with my boss, and suddenly he's questioning my teamwork skills." The accusation hung between us like a challenge. I felt the familiar urge to apologize, to soothe his ego and take responsibility for his professional problems. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Your relationship with your colleagues is your responsibility, Connor, not mine." He blinked, clearly surprised by my response. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Rodriguez also mentioned that you're doing excellent work on his foundation project," Connor said finally. "Apparently, you made quite an impression at his dinner party." "I'm good at my job. Are you?" Connor's voice had taken on an edge. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're good at inserting yourself where you don't belong." The comment was designed to make me feel small, but instead it crystallized something I'd been avoiding. Connor wasn't just unsupportive of my success, he was actively threatened by it, and I was tired of making myself smaller to manage his insecurity. "I belong wherever my skills and talents take me," I said quietly. Connor stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him recalculating his approach. The old tactics weren't working, and he seemed unsure how to proceed. "Just don't forget what's really important," he said finally. "Your marriage, your real life, not some fantasy about being a big-shot designer." That night, I lay in bed, thinking about Marcus's job offer, and Connor's reaction to my success. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One man saw my potential and wanted to nurture it. The other saw my growth as a threat to be managed. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine a different life, a life where my talents were valued, where my opinions mattered, where I didn't have to apologize for taking up space. It was a dangerous thought, but once it took root, I couldn't shake it. The question was whether I was brave enough to reach for it. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of persistent rain that makes Portland feel like it's wrapped in gray velvet. I stood at our bedroom window, watching water streak down the glass while Connor showered, and made a decision that would change everything. I was going to accept Marcus's job offer. The realization came quietly, without fanfare or dramatic internal monologue. It simply settled into my chest like a piece of myself clicking back into place. For too long, I'd been living a smaller version of my life, apologizing for talents Connor found threatening, and dreams he dismissed as unrealistic. When Connor emerged from the bathroom, toweling his hair with the aggressive efficiency of someone perpetually running late, I was already dressed for work. "You're up early," he observed, not quite looking at me as he selected a tie from his extensive collection. I wanted to get to the office early today, big project milestone. Connor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Even the mention of my work seemed to irritate him now, as if my professional enthusiasm was a personal affront. Right, the foundation thing. He knotted his tie with sharp, precise movements. Just remember what I said about not overstepping. Rodriguez may seem friendly, but he's still my boss, and mine, I said quietly. Connor's hands stilled on his collar. What? He's my boss too, technically. No, Nat, he's your client. There's a difference. I could have corrected him then, could have mentioned the job offer that would make Marcus my actual employer. Instead, I simply nodded and gathered my things. Some conversations required the right timing, and this wasn't. The Rodriguez Holdings office felt different that morning, charged with possibility in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I'd arrived before most of the staff, giving me time to review my residential project concepts one final time before presenting them to Marcus. The designs were strong, I knew that, clean, sophisticated, but with enough creative edge to appeal to Portland's artistic community. More importantly, they represented work I was genuinely passionate about, the kind of projects that made me remember why I'd fallen in love with design in the first place. Marcus appeared at my desk at exactly 9 o'clock, carrying 2 cups of coffee, and wearing a smile that seemed particularly warm. Ready for the big presentation? He asked, settling into the chair across from my workspace. More than ready. I spread the concept boards across my desk, watching his expression as he studied each design. For several minutes, Marcus examined the work in silence, his fingers tracing elements of the layouts, while his eyes moved systematically across each board. I found myself holding my breath, waiting for his reaction. Natalie, he said finally, looking up with an expression of genuine admiration, this is extraordinary work. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. You really think so? I think you've captured exactly what we need to make this development successful. The branding feels both aspirational and accessible, sophisticated, but not intimidating. He pointed to specific elements as he spoke. The color palette, the typography choices, even the way you've structured the messaging. It all works together perfectly. Thank you. I've been thinking about this project constantly. This level of creative problem-solving doesn't happen by accident. Marcus gathered the boards carefully, treating them with the respect of someone who understood their value. I'd like to present these to the full development team this afternoon. Would you be available to walk them through your creative rationale? My heart leaped. Presenting to the full team meant my work would be seen by senior executives, potential investors, and key stakeholders. It was exactly the kind of high-visibility opportunity I'd been craving. Absolutely. Excellent. The meeting's at 2 o'clock in the main conference room. Marcus stood to leave, then paused. Have you given any more thought to our conversation yesterday about the design division position? This was it, the moment to step forward or retreat, to choose growth or safety. Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'd like to accept. Marcus's smile was brilliant. That's wonderful news. We'll need to work out the details, salary, timeline, benefits, but I'm thrilled to have you as part of the team permanently. There is one thing, I said, feeling suddenly nervous. I'll need to give notice at my current job, and I'll need to discuss this with my husband. Something flickered across Marcus's expression, concern maybe, or understanding. Of course, take whatever time you need to handle the transition properly. After he left, I sat at my desk feeling a mixture of exhilaration and terror. I just accepted a position that would fundamentally change my professional life, working directly for a man my husband already viewed with suspicion and resentment. The morning passed quickly as I prepared for the afternoon presentation, refining my talking points and anticipating questions about the creative strategy. I was so absorbed in the work that I almost missed the text from Connor. Lunch today. We need to talk. My stomach tightened. Connor rarely suggested lunch meetings, especially during busy workdays. The phrase "we need to talk" carried ominous weight in our marriage, usually preceding lectures about my behavior or demands for changes in my priority. I met him at a small cafe near his office, arriving to find him already seated at a corner table with the rigid posture of someone bracing for conflict. He'd ordered for both of us, a presumption that would have annoyed me more if I weren't already nervous about his mood. "How's your day going?" I asked, settling into the chair across from him. "Interesting," Connor said, his tone carefully neutral. "I had a meeting with Rodriguez this morning." "Oh?" I kept my voice light, though something in his expression made my chest tighten. "He mentioned that you're presenting to the development team this afternoon. Apparently your work is impressive enough to warrant a full executive review." Connor delivered this information like an accusation, and I felt the familiar defensive flutter. "It's just a project presentation." Connor leaned forward slightly. "Because it sounds like you're being positioned as more than just a freelance designer. It sounds like Rodriguez is treating you as a key team member." "I am a key team member. On this project. Are you?" Connor's eyes narrowed. "Or are you something else entirely?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to address. Connor's suspicion was sharper than usual, more focused, as if he'd detected something specific rather than just general insecurity. "What are you really asking, Connor?" He sat back in his chair, studying my face with the calculating expression I'd learned to dread. "I'm asking if my wife is developing an inappropriate relationship with my boss." The accusation hit like ice water. "That's ridiculous. You're working closely with him on multiple projects, you're attending dinner parties at his house, you're presenting to his executive team. From the outside it looks like you're building a very personal professional relationship. From the outside it looks like I'm good at my job." "Your job is graphic design, Nat. Not strategic consulting. Not executive presentations. Not intimate dinner parties with successful men who happen to be going through divorces." The last detail caught me off guard. "How do you know about his divorce?" Connor's smile was thin and unpleasant. "I make it my business to know about my boss, just like he apparently makes it his business to know about my wife." "You're being paranoid." "And because I'm starting to wonder if your sudden professional confidence has more to do with Marcus Rodriguez's personal interest than your actual abilities." The comment was designed to wound, and it succeeded. For a moment I felt the familiar shrinking sensation, the impulse to apologize and retreat, but then I remembered Marcus's words. "Don't let anyone convince you that you're not capable of extraordinary things." "My abilities speak for themselves," I said quietly. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're using your position as my wife to gain access to opportunities you'd never get on your own merit." The cruelty of the statement took my breath away. Connor wasn't just questioning my relationship with Marcus, he was attacking my professional competence, suggesting that my success was unearned and inappropriate. "I think we should go," I said, standing abruptly. "I have a presentation to prepare for." "Nat, wait." Connor's voice softened slightly, and he reached for my hand. "I'm not trying to hurt you, I'm trying to protect us. This thing with Rodriguez, whatever it is, it's dangerous, for both of us." "There's no thing with Rodriguez, there's just me doing excellent work and being recognized for it. And that doesn't concern you." A powerful man recently divorced, suddenly taking intense interest in a married woman's career. I pulled my hand free from his grip. "What concerns me is my husband's inability to believe I might deserve professional success." I left Connor sitting at the cafe table and walked back to the Rodriguez Holdings office through the persistent drizzle, my mind racing with anger and doubt. His accusations were insulting and unfair, but they also forced me to examine my own motivations with uncomfortable honesty. Was my growing admiration for Marcus purely professional? Was the excitement I felt about working with him entirely about the creative opportunities? Or was there something more personal driving my enthusiasm? The questions followed me into the conference room at 2 o'clock, where I found myself facing a table of executives, investors and development specialists. Marcus introduced me with warmth and confidence, positioning my presentation as a crucial element of the project's marketing strategy. For the next hour, I walked the team through my creative concepts, explaining the strategic thinking behind each design choice and answering questions about target demographics and brand positioning. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with several team members commenting specifically on the sophistication and market awareness of my approach. This is exactly the kind of creative vision we need to differentiate this development, said Patricia Chen, the senior investment advisor. It's clear you understand both the luxury market and Portland's creative community. The visual identity feels completely authentic to the city while still appealing to sophisticated buyers, added David Kim, the project manager. That's a difficult balance to achieve. As the meeting concluded and attendees began filing out, Marcus approached me with an expression of obvious satisfaction. That was exceptional, Natalie. You handled their questions perfectly, and I could see them responding to your passion for the project. Thank you. It felt good to present work I'm genuinely excited about. About that, Marcus said, glancing around to ensure we had privacy. I'd like to accelerate our timeline for bringing you on board full-time. Based on what the team just saw, I think we could use your strategic input on several other projects as well. How accelerated? 2 weeks? I know that's aggressive, but we have 3 developments launching this quarter, and they could all benefit from your creative perspective. 2 weeks? It was faster than I'd expected, faster than I'd planned for. It would mean having difficult conversations with Connor sooner rather than later, navigating the transition from my current job, and stepping fully into a new professional identity. It was also exactly what I want. I can make that work, I heard myself saying. Excellent. Why don't we schedule a formal meeting for tomorrow to discuss compensation and responsibilities? I want to make sure this transition benefits everyone involved. That evening, I arrived home to find Connor already there, sitting in our living room with a glass of wine and an expression I couldn't read. The aggressive energy from lunch had been replaced by something calmer but potentially more dangerous. How did the presentation go? He asked as I hung up my coat. Very well. The team was receptive to the concepts. Good, I'm glad. Connor gestured to the couch beside him. Come sit. I want to apologize for lunch. I settled next to him cautiously, unsure whether his apparent mood shift was genuine or strategic. I was out of line, Connor continued, suggesting that your success isn't earned. That was unfair and untrue. You're talented, Nat. I've always known that. Thank you. It's just that this situation feels complicated. You working so closely with Rodriguez, the way he looks at you, the opportunities he's creating, it makes me uncomfortable. The way he looks at me. Connor turned to face me directly. You haven't noticed? The way his attention lingers when you're speaking. The way he finds excuses to spend time with you. Come on, Nat. You're a beautiful woman. You must see it. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Though whether from embarrassment or something else, I wasn't sure. Marcus has been nothing but professional. I'm sure but professional doesn't mean platonic. And it doesn't mean his interest is purely about your graphic design skills. Connor's words forced me to examine moments I'd been avoiding. The warmth in Marcus's smile, the way conversation flowed so easily between us, the comfort I felt in his presence. Were those signs of attraction, or simply the pleasure of working with someone who valued my contributions? Even if that were true, I said carefully, nothing inappropriate has happened. Yet, Connor's voice was quiet but pointed. But these situations have a way of evolving, especially when one person is unhappy in their marriage. The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Was I unhappy in my marriage? The question seemed both obvious and impossible to answer simply. Are you saying I'm unhappy? I asked. Connor studied my face for a long moment. I'm saying we've been struggling lately. The distance between us, the tension, it's not something either of us can ignore forever. He was right, and his acknowledgement of our problems was more honest than I'd expected. For months we'd been navigating around the growing gulf between us, without directly addressing it. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I want us to be honest with each other, about what we're feeling, what we need, what we want from this marriage. Connor reached for my hand. And I want you to be honest about Rodriguez. What about him? About whether your feelings for him are purely professional. The directness of the question caught me off guard. Connor was demanding a level of honesty our relationship rarely sustained, and I found myself unsure how to respond. I respect him professionally, I said finally. I admire his vision for the foundation, his approach to business, the way he treats his employees. And personally, I hesitated, and Connor's expression shifted. That's what I thought, he said quietly. Connor, nothing has happened, but something could happen. If you let it. Connor released my hand and stood up, The question is whether you want it to. I want to focus on my career. I want to do work that matters, with people who value my contribution. And if that person happens to be an attractive, successful man who's recently divorced and clearly interested in you, then I'll handle it professionally. Connor nodded slowly, but I could see he wasn't convinced. Rodriguez offered you a job, didn't? The question was so direct, so accurate, that I knew denial would be pointless. Yes, full-time, yes. Connor sat back down heavily. When were you planning to tell me? I was going to discuss it with you tonight. Discuss it, or inform me of your decision. The distinction was fair, and pointed. I had already made my choice, and we both knew it. I've decided to accept, I said quietly. Connor closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, his expression was resigned rather than angry. I see. This is an incredible opportunity, Connor. The kind of position I've always dreamed of. Working for my boss, the man you may or may not have feelings for. Working in my field, using my talents, building something meaningful. With him, with a team of creative professionals on projects that matter. Connor stood up again and walked to our front window, staring out at the dark street. You know this changes everything, right? Not just your job, but us, our dynamic, our future, the way people perceive our marriage. It changes my career prospects, that's all. No, it changes the balance of power between us. Suddenly, you have independent income, professional status, daily interaction with someone who sees you differently than I do. That changes everything. His honesty was startling and more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. Connor understood exactly what this job offer represented. Not just professional growth, but personal independence. Maybe that's not a bad thing, I said quietly. Connor turned from the window to look at me directly. Maybe not, but it's the end of the marriage we've had and the beginning of something else. I don't know, that depends on what you really want. The conversation ended there, both of us recognizing that we'd reached a point requiring reflection rather than resolution. Connor retreated to his home office, and I spent the evening in our bedroom, thinking about choices and consequences, and the woman I was becoming. The next morning brought our formal meeting about the design division position. Marcus had prepared a comprehensive proposal covering salary, benefits, responsibilities and growth opportunity. The compensation package was generous, nearly double what I made at Cascade Creative, but more importantly, the role offered genuine creative authority and strategic input on major projects. The position would be Director of Creative Strategy, Marcus explained as we reviewed the offer. You'd oversee all visual branding for Rodriguez Holdings properties, lead the creative team we're building, and have significant input on project development and marketing strategy. It sounds incredible. It is incredible, and you're the right person for it. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I have to ask though, how does your husband feel about this opportunity? The question was carefully phrased, professional but personal enough to acknowledge the complexity of the situation. Connor has some concerns about the transition, I said diplomatically. Understandable. It's a significant change, and workplace dynamics can affect home dynamics. Marcus's expression was thoughtful. For what it's worth, I have tremendous respect for your professionalism. This offer is based entirely on your abilities and potential. I appreciate that. At the same time, I want you to feel comfortable with the working relationship. If there are aspects of the position that might create complications, we should address them up front. I studied Marcus's face, looking for subtext or hidden meaning. Instead, I saw genuine concern for my comfort and success. I think I can handle any complications that arise, I said. I'm sure you can, but Natalie, Marcus's voice softened slightly, don't let anyone make you feel guilty for pursuing opportunities you've earned. Your talent deserves recognition, regardless of how that makes other people feel. That afternoon, I submitted my resignation to Cascade Creative, giving them the standard 2 weeks notice, while internally preparing for the next phase of my career. My boss, Linda Martinez, was disappointed but understanding. This sounds like exactly the kind of opportunity you've been working toward, she said as we discussed the transition. Rodriguez Holdings is lucky to get you. Thank you. That means a lot. Just promise me you won't forget about the small creative community when you're running with the big players. Never. Actually, Part of my role will involve supporting local artists and designers through the foundation. Linda smiled. Then it sounds perfect. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of transition activities, wrapping up projects at Cascade Creative, preparing for my new role, and navigating increasingly tense conversations with Connor. He'd accepted my decision with outward grace, but I could feel his resentment simmering beneath the surface. The breaking point came on my last Friday at Cascade Creative. I'd planned to celebrate with drinks with my old colleagues, but Connor called in the afternoon with a demand disguised as a request. "Tyler's having people over tonight," he said. I told him we'd be there. "I already have plans. It's my last day here, and the team wanted to celebrate." "Cancel them." "What?" "Cancel your plans, Nat. This is important. Tyler's been promoted to senior account manager, and his party is going to have key people from Rodriguez Holdings there. I need you with me." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. After months of excluding me from work events, Connor suddenly wanted me present when it served his professional interests. "I'm not canceling my plans." "Yes, you are. This isn't negotiable." "Actually, it is. I'm an adult with my own commitments." Connor's voice sharpened. "You're also my wife, and sometimes that comes with obligations." "Obligations?" "To support your husband's career, to present a united front, to prioritize our marriage over your temporary colleagues." The conversation crystallized everything wrong with our dynamic. Connor viewed my support as mandatory but his as conditional. My career was temporary while his was essential. My commitments were negotiable while his were sacred. "I'm going to my celebration," I said firmly. "You can go to Tyler's party alone." "If you do this, Nat, if you choose them over me tonight, it's going to have consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that affect marriages." The threat was vague, but unmistakable. Connor was drawing a line, demanding I choose between my professional relationships and marital harmony. "Then I guess we'll deal with those consequences," I said, and hung up. That evening, celebrating with my Cascade Creative colleagues, I felt lighter than I had in months. The conversation was warm and supportive, focused on shared experiences and future possibilities, rather than power dynamics and control. To Natalie, Linda raised her glass in a toast, for having the courage to reach for what she deserved. As we clinked glasses, I thought about Connor's ultimatum and realized something important. I was no longer willing to make myself smaller to preserve his comfort. Whatever consequences he had in mind, I was ready to face them. I came home after 10 to find Connor waiting in our living room, with the calculated stillness of someone who'd been rehearsing an argument. His expression was cold, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. "How was your celebration?" he asked, his tone deceptively casual. "It was lovely." "How was Tyler's party?" "Interesting. Rodriguez was there." "Actually?" He asked where you were. My heart skipped slightly. "What did you tell him?" I told him my wife had more important things to do than support her husband's career. "Connor," he seemed surprised, said he hoped everything was all right between us. Connor's smile was sharp and unpleasant. I assured him that everything was fine, that you were just excited about your new position. "Very excited." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. My wife chose her work colleagues over her husband. My boss noticed my wife's absence. My wife is about to become my boss's employee." Connor stood up slowly. "How do you think that looks?" "It looks like I'm a professional with my own commitments. It looks like you're prioritizing another man over your husband." "Another man? Rodriguez. You chose celebrating with people who work for him over supporting me at an event where he was present. You chose your new boss over your actual husband." The logic was twisted but not entirely unfair. I had chosen my professional relationships over Connor's demands, and Marcus was increasingly central to my career decisions. I chose to honor a commitment I'd already made to people you'll never see again after today. To people who've supported my growth and celebrated my success. "Unlike your husband." "You mean?" The accusation hung between us. honest and painful. Connor was right that he hadn't supported my growth or celebrated my success, but acknowledging that would require examining why, and neither of us seemed ready for that conversation. I think we should go to bed, I said finally. We're both tired, and this isn't productive. No, Nat, we're going to finish this. Connor moved closer, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. You want to work for Rodriguez? Fine. But you need to understand what that means for us. What does it mean? It means your loyalty is divided. It means your professional relationship with him becomes more important than your personal relationship with me. It means I become secondary in my own marriage. Or it means I become an equal partner instead of a subordinate. Connor's expression shifted, and for a moment, I saw something like fear in his eyes. Is that what you want, to be equals? Yes. Even if it destroys what we have. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and realized that what we had was already destroyed. We'd built our marriage on his dominance, and my submission, his dreams and my support, his comfort and my accommodation. Equality would indeed destroy that dynamic, but what would replace it? Maybe what we have isn't worth preserving, I said quietly. Connor went very still. Be careful now. Be very careful what you say next. Why? What are you going to do? Threaten me? Punish me for having opinions? Make me feel guilty for wanting more? I'm going to remind you that actions have consequences, that choices shape futures, that marriages require sacrifice. Whose sacrifice, Connor? Because so far, all the sacrificing has been mine. That's not true, isn't it? I've sacrificed my confidence, my friendships, my professional ambitions, my sense of self-worth. What have you sacrificed? Connor's jaw worked for a moment before he answered. I've sacrificed the woman I married, the one who supported me, who put our relationship first, who didn't question every decision I made. You mean the woman who was afraid to disagree with you? I mean the woman who loved me enough to trust my judgment. And I mean the woman who was too insecure to trust her own. We stared at each other across our living room, and I realized we were grieving different losses. Connor mourned the compliant wife who'd made him feel powerful. I mourned the confident woman I'd been before, learning to shrink myself for his comfort. So what now? Connor asked finally. Now I start my new job on Monday. I build a career I'm proud of. I remember who I am when I'm not managing your ego. And I looked around our shared space, the furniture we'd chosen together, the photos documenting happier times, the life we'd built on foundations that no longer felt solid. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know I can't go back. Connor nodded slowly, and I saw resignation replace anger in his expression. Then I guess we'll see what forward looks like. That weekend, we moved around each other with careful politeness, both of us recognizing that we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Connor spent most of Saturday at his office, claiming he had urgent projects to complete. I spent the day preparing for my new role, reviewing project files, and planning strategic approaches. Sunday brought an unexpected development. Marcus called to ask if I'd be interested in attending a gallery opening with him that evening. It's for a local artist whose work I'm considering for one of our developments, he explained. I'd value your perspective on how her aesthetic might complement our brand identity. The invitation was clearly professional, but something about it felt significant. Going would mean spending Sunday evening with Marcus while Connor was home brooding. It would also mean being seen publicly with my new boss at a social event. I'd be happy to provide input, I said. Excellent. It's at the Pearl District Gallery, 7 o'clock. Casual attire. After hanging up, I sat in our kitchen, thinking about optics and intentions, and the thin line between professional collaboration and personal connection. Connor was right that my relationship with Marcus had evolved beyond typical client-contractor dynamics, but was that necessarily inappropriate, or simply evidence of mutual respect and shared creative vision? I decided it didn't matter. The gallery opening was a legitimate professional opportunity, and I was going to attend with confidence rather than guilt. Connor noticed me getting ready with more care than usual, selecting a dress that was elegant but not obviously dressy, adding jewelry that suggested sophistication without screaming effort. Going somewhere? He asked from our bedroom doorway, Gallery opening with professional consultation. Connor's expression didn't change, but I saw his hands tighten slightly on the doorframe. Of course it is. It is, Connor. I'm sure it is. Just like the dinner party was foundation business, and the lunch meetings are project consultations, and the job offer was purely about your qualifications. Yes, all of those things are exactly what they appear to be. And the fact that you're getting dressed up for another evening with him is just professional dedication. I turned to face Connor directly. What are you really asking? I'm asking if you're having an affair. The question was direct and deserved an honest answer. No, but you want to be. That question was more complicated, requiring a level of self-examination I wasn't sure I was ready for. I want to feel valued. I want to work with people who respect my abilities. I want to have conversations where I don't have to monitor every word for potential offense. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. Connor nodded slowly. Then I guess that's answer enough. The gallery opening was everything I'd hoped. Sophisticated without being pretentious, creative without being chaotic, filled with people who were genuinely passionate about art and design. Marcus moved through the crowd with easy confidence, introducing me to artists, collectors and cultural influencers, as his creative strategist. Natalie has incredible insight into how visual art intersects with brand identity, he told the gallery owner. She's helping us think more thoughtfully about incorporating local artists into our developments. The conversation that followed was engaging and substantive, focused on the practical challenges of balancing commercial viability with artistic integrity. I found myself contributing confidently, my ideas received with interest and built upon by others. This is exactly the kind of collaboration we need more of in Portland, said Rebecca Martinez, a prominent art collector. Developers who understand that good design benefits everyone. As the evening progressed, I realized I was having the kind of intellectually stimulating experience I'd been craving for years. The people around me were curious, creative, and genuinely interested in meaningful work. It was such a contrast to Connor's social circle, where conversations rarely moved beyond career advancement and material acquisition. You seem to be enjoying yourself, Marcus observed as we stepped outside for some air. This is exactly the kind of event I love. Smart people talking about work that matters. It shows. You've been the most engaged person here tonight. We stood on the gallery's small patio, surrounded by the gentle buzz of evening conversation and the distant sounds of downtown Portland. The October air was crisp but not cold, perfect for the kind of thoughtful discussion that had filled the evening. Thank you for including me, I said. This kind of cultural connection is exactly what I want to bring to the design work, and it's exactly what we need. Your ability to see the bigger picture, to understand how aesthetics serve communities, that's rare. Marcus's praise felt different from the professional compliments I was used to receiving. It was more personal, more focused on who I was rather than just what I could produce. Can I ask you something? I said, feeling suddenly bold. Of course. Why did you really offer me the job? I mean, yes, my work is good, but you could have found other talented designers. What made you want to work with me specifically? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer with the thoughtfulness I'd come to appreciate about him. Honestly, because you see possibilities where others see obstacles. Because you ask the right questions instead of just providing expected answers. Because you care about the human impact of design choices. He paused. And because you deserve to work with people who recognize your potential. The last comment felt loaded with meaning beyond professional collaboration, and I found myself studying Marcus's expression for clues about his intentions. That's very kind of you to say. It's not kindness, Natalie, it's recognition. We stood there for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities hanging between us. I was acutely aware of how comfortable I felt in his presence, how natural our conversation felt, how different this interaction was from the careful navigation required in my marriage. I should probably head home, I said finally, though I wasn't eager to return to Connor's brooding presence. Of course, thank you for coming tonight. Your insights about the artist's work were invaluable. As Marcus walked me to my car, I found myself reluctant to end the evening. The conversation, the atmosphere, the sense of being valued and understood, it was exactly what I'd been missing in my daily life. I'll see you tomorrow, Marcus said as I unlocked my car door. Yes, bright and early for my first official day. I'm looking forward to it. Driving home through Portland's quiet Sunday night streets, I thought about the evening and what it represented. Professional collaboration, certainly, but also personal connection with someone who saw my potential rather than my limitation. The contrast with my marriage was impossible to ignore. Connor was waiting when I got home, sitting in our living room with a glass of wine and an expression of carefully controlled neutrality. How was the gallery opening? He asked, informative. The artist's work would complement the residential development beautifully, and Rodriguez was a perfect professional collaborator. Connor studied my face for a moment. You're glowing. I'm excited about the work. Are you, or are you excited about him? The question forced me to examine my own feelings with uncomfortable honesty. Was my enthusiasm about the professional opportunity, or was there something more personal driving my excitement? I'm excited about feeling valued, I said finally, by him, by someone, anyone. It's been a while since I felt like my opinions mattered. Connor's expression softened slightly. They matter to me, do they? Because most of the time it feels like you're just waiting for me to agree with you. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked my opinion and actually considered changing your mind based on my response? Connor was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him genuinely thinking about the question. I don't know, he said finally. Neither do I. That admission hung between us, honest and painful. We'd both recognized something fundamental about our dynamic, something that couldn't be unseen or unfelt. So what do we do about it? Connor asked. I don't know that either, but I know I can't go back to feeling invisible in my own life, and I don't know how to be married to someone who doesn't need me. Monday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that only October in Portland can deliver. I stood in front of our bathroom mirror applying makeup with the precision of someone preparing for battle, though the war I was fighting remained undefined. Today marked my first official day as Director of Creative Strategy at Rodriguez Holdings, and the weight of that transition felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Connor had already left for work, claiming an early client meeting that I suspected was designed to avoid the awkwardness of us leaving for the same building at the same time. We'd spent Sunday evening in careful politeness, both of us recognizing that our conversation had exposed cracks in our foundation that couldn't be easily repaired. The Rodriguez Holdings office buzzed with Monday morning energy as I arrived, my new employee badge still feeling foreign in my hand. Marcus had arranged for me to have a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, a space that felt both professional and inspiring. Welcome to your first day, said Claire Nakamura, my new assistant, appearing at my door with coffee and a stack of project files. Marcus wanted me to brief you on this week's priorities before the team meeting at 10. Claire was efficient and warm, the kind of person who anticipated needs before they were expressed. She walked me through my calendar, introduced me to key team members, and explained the various projects I'd be overseeing. The residential development we discussed is moving into marketing phase, she said, opening the relevant file. Marcus wants your input on everything from brochure design to website architecture. The timeline is aggressive but manageable. As Claire outlined my responsibilities, I felt the familiar thrill of challenging creative work. This was what I'd been preparing for my entire career, the opportunity to shape brand identity from conception to execution, to work with resources that matched my ambitions. There's also the foundation launch, Claire continued. Marcus considers that your signature project. He's given you complete creative authority over the visual identity and marketing strategy. Complete authority? His words exactly. He said he trusts your vision more than his own when it comes to creative decisions. The confidence Marcus placed in my abilities still felt surreal after years of having my opinions questioned and minimized. I spent the morning reviewing project files and developing strategic approaches, my mind racing with possibility. The team meeting at 10 introduced me to the full creative department: photographers, copywriters, web developers, and marketing specialists who would be collaborating on various projects. Marcus led the meeting with the easy authority of someone who inspired rather than intimidated. I want everyone to know that Natalie brings not just exceptional design skills, but strategic thinking that will elevate all our work, he announced. Her perspective on how visual identity serves community needs is exactly what Rodriguez Holdings needs as we expand our Portland presence. After the meeting, Marcus asked me to stay behind for a private discussion about the foundation project. As the conference room emptied, I found myself alone with him for the first time since accepting the position. "How does it feel to be officially part of the team?" he asked, settling into the chair across from me. "Overwhelming in the best possible way. The scope of these projects is exactly what I've always wanted to work on. And you're exactly what these projects need." Marcus's expression grew more serious. "I want to be transparent about something, Natalie. There's been some discussion among the Northwest financial team about your hire." My stomach tightened. What kind of discussion? Nothing malicious, but there are questions about the boss hiring his employee's wife for a senior position. It raises eyebrows in corporate environments, even though I'm qualified, especially because you're qualified. People wonder if there are additional motivations beyond professional ones. The implication was clear, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Are there?" Marcus met my eyes directly. "My motivations for hiring you are entirely professional. Your qualifications speak for themselves, and anyone who reviews your work will reach the same conclusion. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't value our personal compatibility as well. We work well together, we share similar values, and I genuinely enjoy our collaborations. And that's problematic. It's only problematic if we allow other people's perceptions to influence our working relationship." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "The question is whether you're comfortable with the scrutiny that comes with this position." I thought about Connor's accusations, about the careful way people would now examine my interactions with Marcus, about the additional pressure to prove my competence beyond any doubt. "I'm comfortable with earning respect through excellent work," I said finally. "Good, because that's exactly what you'll do." The rest of my first week passed in a blur of project briefings, strategic planning sessions, and creative development work. I threw myself into the foundation branding with an intensity that surprised even me, developing concepts that balanced specification with accessibility, prestige with warmth. The residential development project proved equally engaging, requiring me to understand luxury market psychology while maintaining authentic Portland character. I found myself working late most evenings, not from obligation but from genuine excitement about the creative challenges. Connor's reaction to my enthusiasm was carefully neutral, but I could sense his growing discomfort with my transformation. I came home energized rather than drained, confident rather than uncertain, focused on future possibilities rather than daily compromise. "You seem different," he observed on Thursday evening as I spread project materials across our dining table. "Different how?" "More intense, more focused, like you're finally doing what you're supposed to be doing." The comment was perceptive and more generous than I'd expected. "That's exactly how it feels, and that doesn't concern you. That it took working for my boss to make you feel fulfilled." I looked up from my sketches to study Connor's expression. "It concerns me that it took this long to find work that challenged me properly, or it took finding the right person to challenge you." The observation hung between us, loaded with implications neither of us seemed ready to address directly. Connor was right that my transformation coincided with working closely with Marcus, but disentangling professional inspiration from personal attraction felt increasingly complicated. "I'm going to work late tomorrow," I said, deflecting from the personal implication. "The foundation presentation is Monday, and I want everything perfect." "Of course you do." Friday evening found me alone in the Rodriguez Holdings office, refining presentation materials under the warm glow of my desk lamp. The building was quiet except for the distant hum of cleaning crews and the occasional sound of traffic from the street below. I was so absorbed in perfecting the foundation logo that I didn't hear Marcus approaching until he knocked gently on my open door. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked, though it was barely 8 o'clock. "Just want to make sure Monday's presentation is flawless." Marcus entered my office and settled into the chair across from my desk, studying the materials I had spread across every available surface. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the design boards. For the next hour we reviewed every element of the foundation's visual identity logo variations, color palettes, typography choices, application examples. Marcus asked thoughtful questions and offered insights that pushed my thinking in new directions. "This is exceptional work, Natalie. The foundation board is going to be impressed." I hope so. This project means a lot to me, because of the social impact that, and because it represents everything I want my career to be about: meaningful work, creative challenges, the opportunity to make a difference. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Can I tell you something? When I started this company, I thought success was just about profit margins and market share. It took me years to understand that the best work happens when people are genuinely passionate about what they're creating. What changed your perspective? Failure? Most. My marriage fell apart because I was so focused on external validation that I forgot about internal satisfaction. My ex-wife was right about one thing: I was building an empire but not a life. The personal revelation surprised. Marcus rarely discussed his divorce or the emotional cost of his professional success. Is that why you started the foundation? Partly. I wanted to create something that mattered beyond just financial returns, but also because I realized that work should enhance life, not replace it. And now, Marcus met my eyes directly. Now I'm learning that the right collaborations can be both professionally rewarding and personally meaningful. The comment felt significant, though I wasn't sure if he was speaking generally or specifically about our working relation. That's a nice way to think about it, I said carefully. It's more than nice, Natalie. It's essential. Life's too short to spend 40 hours a week with people who don't inspire you. The weight of his words settled between us, and I found myself thinking about Connor, about the careful way I'd learned to navigate his moods and manage his expectations. When was the last time he'd inspired me rather than exhausted me? I should probably head home, I said, though I was reluctant to end the conversation. Of course, but Natalie. Marcus stood to leave, then paused at my door. Thank you for bringing such passion to this work. It's been a long time since I've worked with someone who cares as much about the outcome as the process. After he left, I sat in my office for another 30 minutes, ostensibly organizing materials, but actually processing the evening's conversation. The ease of communication with Marcus, the mutual respect, the shared values, it was such a contrast to the careful negotiations that characterized my marriage. I arrived home to find Connor waiting with takeout dinner and an expression I couldn't quite read. Working late again, he observed as I hung up my coat. The foundation presentation is Monday. I wanted everything perfect. With Rodriguez. Among other people, yes. Connor handed me a container of Thai food and gestured toward the couch. I've been thinking about us, about what you said last weekend. I settled next to him, curious about his tone, which was more reflective than accusatory. What about it? About feeling invisible in your own life, about not feeling valued. Connor was quiet for a moment. I think you were right. The admission surprised me. Connor rarely acknowledged fault or accepted criticism, especially about his treatment of me. Right about what, specifically? About me not really listening to your opinions, about dismissing your ambition, about making you feel smaller instead of supporting your growth. I studied his profile as he spoke, looking for signs of manipulation or strategic positioning. Instead, I saw something that looked like genuine regret. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can see the difference in you. Since you started the new job, you're more confident, more engaged, more like the woman I fell in love with. And that doesn't threaten you? Connor turned to face me directly. It does, but maybe that's my problem to solve, not yours to manage. The conversation was more honest than we'd managed in months, and I felt a flicker of hope that maybe our marriage could evolve, rather than simply deteriorate. What does that mean practically? I asked. It means I want to try supporting your success instead of feeling threatened by it. It means I want to be the kind of husband who celebrates your achievements instead of minimizing them. And if my achievements involve working closely with your boss. Connor's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained steady. Then I'll deal with my insecurity instead of making it your responsibility. That's very mature of you. I'm trying to be. The alternative is losing you, and I'm not ready for that. We spent the rest of the evening talking more openly than we had in months, discussing our marriage, our individual goals, and the changes that would be necessary for us to grow together rather than apart. It felt like progress, though I remained cautious about long-term implications. The weekend brought a brief respite from relationship tensions, as I focused on final preparations for Monday's foundation presentation. Connor made an effort to be supportive, bringing me coffee while I worked, and asking thoughtful questions about the project without obvious jealousy or resentment. The visual identity is really sophisticated, he said, reviewing my presentation boards. Professional but approachable, exactly what a foundation needs. Thank you, I'm proud of this work. You should be. Rodriguez is lucky to have you. The comment felt significant coming from Connor, who had previously questioned both my qualifications and Marcus's motivations for hiring me. Monday morning arrived with the kind of nervous energy that accompanies important presentation. I'd rehearsed my talking points until they felt natural, prepared for likely questions, and assembled materials that showcased the strategic thinking behind each creative decision. The Foundation Board meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock in Rodriguez Holdings' main conference room. As I set up my presentation, I felt the familiar pre-performance adrenaline that signaled both excitement and terror. Marcus arrived early to review the setup and offer encouragement. Remember, he said, as board members began filing in, you're not just presenting design. You're presenting a vision for how the foundation can serve communities while maintaining the credibility necessary to attract serious funding. The board consisted of local business leaders, nonprofit directors, and community activists, exactly the kind of diverse group that would challenge assumptions and demand thoughtful answers. As I began my presentation, I felt the comfortable confidence that comes from thorough preparation and genuine passion for the subject matter. The Foundation's visual identity needs to communicate several potentially conflicting messages, I explained, as I walked through the brand strategy. Professional credibility for potential donors, approachable warmth for community partners, and innovative thinking for collaborative opportunity. For the next 45 minutes, I presented each element of the brand system, explaining how color choices, typography decisions, and imagery styles worked together to achieve strategic goals. The board asked probing questions about target audiences, competitive positioning, and scalability across different media. The logo system is particularly impressive, said Dr. Sarah Chen, director of a prominent local nonprofit. It feels both established and fresh, which is exactly what a new foundation needs. The messaging strategy demonstrates real understanding of community dynamics, added Robert Kim, a prominent philanthropist. This isn't just pretty design, it's strategic thinking. As the presentation concluded, I felt the satisfaction that comes from work that meets its objectives, while exceeding expectations. The board's response was overwhelmingly positive, with several members commenting specifically on the sophistication and thoughtfulness of the approach. This is exactly the kind of professional identity that will help us attract serious funding, said Janet Morrison, the board chair. Well done. After the board members left, Marcus and I remained in the conference room, surrounded by presentation materials and the lingering energy of successful collaboration. That was extraordinary, Natalie. You handled their questions perfectly, and I could see them responding to your passion for the project. Thank you. It felt good to present work I'm genuinely excited about. It showed. Your enthusiasm was infectious, and your strategic thinking was impressive even by board standards. As we gathered the presentation materials, I realized that the morning had represented more than just professional success. It was validation of my abilities, confirmation that I belonged in sophisticated creative environments, and proof that my ambitions were realistic rather than delusional. I have something to tell you, Marcus said as we prepared to leave the conference room. What's that? The board was so impressed with your presentation that they want to expand the foundation's scope. They're talking about additional programs, larger budgets, more comprehensive community outreach. That's wonderful news. It's also a much bigger job than we originally discussed. Are you interested in taking on expanded responsibility? The question represented another fork in the road, another opportunity to choose growth over safety. A larger role would mean more visibility, more resources, and more direct collaboration with Marcus. Very interested, I heard myself saying. Excellent. We'll need to discuss compensation adjustments and timeline modifications, but I wanted to gauge your enthusiasm first. That afternoon, as I worked on refining the foundation materials based on board feedback, I found myself thinking about trajectories and possibilities. 6 months ago, I'd been a frustrated graphic designer at a small firm, making myself smaller to accommodate Connor's insecurities. Now I was directing creative strategy for a major development company, and leading the visual identity for an expanding foundation. The transformation felt both gradual and sudden, like waking up in a life I'd dreamed about but never quite believed I deserved. Connor noticed the change in my energy when I came home that evening. "You're practically glowing," he observed as I described the morning's success. "The board loved the presentation. They want to expand the foundation's scope." "That's incredible, Nat. You should be proud." "I am. This is exactly the kind of project I've always wanted to lead." Connor was quiet for a moment, and I could see him processing the implications of my growing professional success. "Are you happy?" he asked finally. The question was simple but loaded with complexity. Was I happy? I was professionally fulfilled in ways I'd never experienced. I was intellectually challenged and creatively energized. I was working with people who valued my contributions and supported my growth. But was I happy in my marriage? That question felt more complicated. "I'm happier than I've been in a long time," I said carefully. "Because of the work, because I feel like myself again, like the person I was before I learned to second-guess my own judgment." Connor nodded slowly. "And that person is someone I fell in love with." "Is she someone you can stay in love with?" "I don't know, but I want to find out." Tuesday brought news that would complicate everything. Connor came home from work with an expression I'd learned to recognize as barely contained excitement, mixed with anxiety. "Rodriguez announced the promotion structure for next quarter," he said, settling onto our couch with unusual intensity. "Good news?" "Potentially. There's a new VP position opening up, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. It would be a huge step up, both in terms of responsibility and compensation." "That sounds perfect for you." "It is, but there's a complication." Connor met my eyes directly. "Rodriguez wants to interview spouses as part of the selection process." My stomach dropped. Spouses? The position involves significant client entertainment, industry events, representing the company at social functions. He wants to make sure candidates have partners who can handle that kind of visibility. "And you told him about my work with the foundation?" "I told him my wife was Rodriguez Holdings' Director of Creative Strategy." "Yes." The implications were staggering. Connor's promotion prospects now depended partly on my performance, and Marcus's perception of our marriage. The professional and personal dynamics I'd been carefully navigating were about to collide in the most public way possible. "When is the interview?" "Friday afternoon, you and I together, presenting ourselves as a power couple capable of representing Rodriguez Holdings at the highest levels." The irony was breathtaking. After months of Connor dismissing my professional ambitions and questioning my qualifications, my career success had become essential to his advancement. "Are you comfortable with that?" I asked. "Comfortable with my wife's success helping my career?" "Yes, I'm learning to be comfortable with that. Even if it means acknowledging that I'm more than just arm candy." Connor winced slightly. "Especially because of that. Rodriguez isn't looking for trophy wives. He's looking for strategic partners, women who can contribute meaningfully to business relationships. Women like me, women exactly like you." We spent the rest of the evening discussing the interview process and what it would require. Connor would need to present his strategic vision for the new position, while I would need to demonstrate my ability to represent the company in social and professional settings. "We'll need to show that we're a team," Connor said, as we reviewed potential questions, "that we support each other's ambitions and present a united front." "Can we do that convincingly?" Connor was quiet for a moment. "I think so. If we focus on what's actually working between us rather than what isn't." Wednesday and Thursday passed in intensive preparation. Connor and I discussed his strategic plans, reviewed company objectives, and practiced presenting ourselves as collaborative partners rather than competing individuals. The process forced us to articulate shared goals and values in ways we hadn't done for years. Despite our recent tensions, we discovered that we still functioned well as a professional team, even if our personal dynamics remained complicated. "You're good at this," Connor observed as we rehearsed responses to likely questions. "The strategic thinking, the big picture perspective. You understand business dynamics better than I gave you credit for." "Thank you. I mean it. Nat, working with you on this has reminded me why I was attracted to you in the first place. You're smart, insightful, and you see connections that other people miss. The compliment felt genuine and long overdue, though I wondered if Connor's appreciation was motivated by genuine recognition or strategic necessity. Friday afternoon arrived with the crisp October sunshine that makes Portland feel like the most beautiful city in the world. Connor and I dressed carefully for the interview, professional but not overly formal, sophisticated but approachable, presenting ourselves as successful individuals who functioned even better as a team. The interview was scheduled for 3 o'clock in Marcus's office, a space I'd become familiar with through our various project collaborations. As we waited in the reception area, I felt the nervous energy that accompanies high-stakes performance. "Remember," Connor murmured as we were called in, "we're presenting a partnership." Marcus greeted us both warmly, though I noticed his attention lingering on me slightly longer than strictly professional interaction required. The conference table was set up with water glasses, notepads, and an agenda that suggested the interview would be comprehensive. "Thank you both for coming," Marcus began. "As Connor mentioned, this position requires significant public representation of Rodriguez Holdings. I want to understand how you function as a team, and how you'd handle the social and professional demands of senior executive role." For the next hour we discussed Connor's strategic vision, my creative perspective, and our combined ability to represent the company at industry events, client dinners, and community functions. The questions were thoughtful and challenging, requiring us to demonstrate both individual competence and collaborative effectiveness. "Natalie," Marcus said, turning his attention specifically to me, "your role with the foundation has given you insight into Rodriguez Holdings' values and objectives. How would you leverage that understanding in social situations?" "I think the foundation work demonstrates that Rodriguez Holdings isn't just about profit maximization," I replied. "You're committed to community impact and sustainable development. In social settings, I'd focus on those values while highlighting the company's strategic advantage. And you're comfortable with that level of visibility, being seen as a representative of the company rather than just Connor's spouse?" The question felt loaded with multiple meanings, though I couldn't be sure if Marcus was testing my confidence or exploring our relationship dynamic. "I'm comfortable representing organizations whose values align with my own," I said. "Rodriguez Holdings' commitment to community development and ethical business practices makes that easy." As the interview continued, I found myself genuinely impressed with Connor's strategic thinking and presentation skills. When he focused on professional challenges rather than personal insecurities, he was articulate, insightful, and genuinely capable. "You work well together," Marcus observed as the formal interview concluded. "There's clear mutual respect and complementary skill set." "We've learned to leverage each other's strengths," Connor replied, and I was struck by how true that statement felt in professional contexts. Even if our personal relationship remained complicated, "I'll make my decision by next week," Marcus said as we prepared to leave. "Thank you both for a thoughtful conversation." Walking back to our cars after the interview, Connor and I felt the shared satisfaction of a performance well executed. "That went well," he said, unlocking his car door. You presented your strategic vision clearly, and the questions weren't as difficult as I expected. We make a good team when we're focused on external goals." The observation was accurate and somewhat melancholy. Connor and I functioned effectively as professional partners, but that collaboration didn't necessarily translate to personal fulfillment. "I'll see you at home," I said, settling into my own car. That evening Connor and I celebrated our successful interview with takeout from our favorite restaurant and a bottle of wine that had been saving for a special occasion. "Whatever happens with the promotion," Connor said, raising his glass in a toast, "today reminded me that you're an incredible partner when I'm not too insecure to appreciate it. And you're genuinely talented when you're not too defensive to show." We clinked glasses, and for a moment, I felt hope that maybe our marriage could evolve in healthier directions. The interview had required us to present our best selves, and those selves were still compatible and mutually supportive. The weekend passed quietly, both of us processing the interview and its implications while trying not to obsess over Marcus's decision timeline. Connor was notably more attentive and appreciative than he'd been in months, as if the interview had reminded him of my value as a partner. Monday morning brought the call that would change everything. "Natalie?" Marcus's voice was warm but professional. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "Of course," Connor got the promotion, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships, effective immediately. I felt genuine happiness for my husband's success, even amid our relationship complications. That's wonderful news. He'll be excellent in that role. I think so too, but Natalie, I'm calling you specifically because the promotion creates an interesting opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Connor's new role will require significant travel and client management. I'd like to expand your responsibilities to include strategic oversight of our Portland operations when he's out of the office. The offer was unexpected and significant, essentially making me Connor's professional equal within the company hierarchy. That's a generous offer. It's a strategic necessity. Your performance with the foundation and your interview on Friday demonstrated that you have the strategic thinking and communication skills we need at the executive level. What would Connor think about this arrangement? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I think Connor understands that your success benefits everyone involved. The question is whether you're interested in that level of responsibility. Looking out my office window at the Portland skyline, I realized that the opportunity represented everything I'd been working toward: executive authority, strategic influence, and recognition as a leader rather than just a support person. Yes, I said, I'm very interested. Excellent. Why don't we discuss the details over dinner tomorrow night? There are several aspects of the new structure that would benefit from private conversation. The dinner invitation felt significant beyond just business planning, though I couldn't be certain whether that was intentional or coincidental. That sounds perfect. After hanging up, I sat in my office processing the morning's development. Connor had received the promotion he'd been working toward, but my own role was expanding in ways that would make me genuinely influential within the company, rather than just a talented employee. The balance of power in both our professional and personal relationships was shifting, and I wasn't entirely sure how either Connor or I would handle the transition. But for the first time in years, I was excited to find out. Tuesday evening found me standing in front of my closet with the kind of indecision that signals internal conflict rather than simple fashion uncertainty. The dinner with Marcus wasn't technically a date, but it wasn't strictly business either, and the distinction felt increasingly important as I considered my clothing option. I finally settled on a navy dress that managed to be both professional and elegant, paired with jewelry that suggested sophistication without screaming effort. As I applied lipstick with more care than usual, I caught my reflection's eye in the bathroom mirror and wondered when I'd started getting ready for Marcus Rodriguez with the same attention I'd once reserved for important dates. Connor had left earlier for a client dinner celebrating his new promotion, his mood buoyant with professional success and renewed confidence in our marriage. His parting kiss had been affectionate and lingering, the gesture of a man who believed he'd successfully navigated a crisis and emerged stronger. "Don't wait up," he'd said. "Tyler's planning to drag this celebration well into the night." The restaurant Marcus had chosen was intimate without being obviously romantic, a small Italian place in the Pearl District known for exceptional food and quiet conversation. As I walked through the entrance, I felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that had become associated with our professional collaborations. Marcus was already seated at a corner table, reviewing something on his phone with the focused attention I'd come to appreciate about his work style. He looked up as I approached, and his smile carried warmth that felt personal rather than purely professional. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing to greet me. "I hope you don't mind the location. I wanted somewhere we could talk without interruption." "It's perfect," I replied, settling into the chair across from him. The first hour of our conversation focused on legitimate business concerns: my expanded role within Rodriguez Holdings, the strategic oversight responsibilities I'd be assuming, and the practical implications of working more closely with senior managers. Marcus had prepared detailed notes about budget authority, decision-making processes, and reporting structures that would define my new position. "Essentially, you'd be functioning as my deputy when Connor's traveling," he explained. "Full authority over creative decisions, strategic input on development projects, and direct communication with investors and community partners. That's significant responsibility. It's responsibility you've already demonstrated you can handle. The foundation's success, your strategic thinking during project development, your performance in Friday's interview, all evidence that you're ready for executive-level authority. As our conversation progressed through dinner, I found myself genuinely excited about the professional opportunities Marcus was describing. The role would challenge me intellectually while providing the kind of meaningful work I'd always craved. "There's one aspect of this arrangement we should discuss directly," Marcus said as we lingered over coffee. "The fact that you'll be essentially replacing Connor when he's out of the office could create interesting dynamics." "Interesting. You'll be making decisions about projects he initiated, managing relationships he's built, representing the company in contexts where people expect to interact with him." Marcus paused. "Some clients and partners might find that transition challenging. Because I'm his wife. Because you're a woman stepping into a traditionally male role. And because the business community still has assumptions about spousal dynamics in professional settings." The observation was astute and concerning. I'd be navigating not just the complexities of increased responsibility, but also the perceptions of people who might view my authority as temporary or illegitimate. "Do you think I can handle that scrutiny?" Marcus met my eyes directly. "I think you can handle anything you set your mind to. The question is whether you want to." "I do want to. I want to prove that I belong in these rooms, making these decisions, leading these conversations." "Then you will." "But Natalie," Marcus's voice softened slightly, "don't feel like you have to prove anything to me. I already know what you're capable of." The comment hung between us, loaded with implications that extended beyond professional collaboration. I found myself studying Marcus's expression, looking for clues about his intentions and motivations. "Can I ask you something personal?" I said, feeling suddenly bold. "Of course. Why did your marriage really end? I know you mentioned different priorities, but what specifically went wrong?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his response with the thoughtfulness I'd come to expect from him. "We built our relationship around who we thought we should be rather than who we actually were," he said finally. "She wanted the status that came with being married to a successful businessman. I wanted the stability that came with having an appropriate wife. Neither of us was particularly interested in the other person beyond those functions." "That sounds lonely." It was, but it was also safe, predictable, socially acceptable. Marcus paused. "It took the divorce to realize that safety and happiness aren't the same thing. And now I'm more interested in authentic connection than appropriate appearance." The statement felt significant, though I wasn't sure if it was meant as general philosophy or specific invitation. Either way, it resonated with my own growing awareness that my marriage had become more about maintaining appearances than nurturing genuine partnership. "What about you?" Marcus asked. "Are you happy in your marriage?" The question was direct and deserved an honest answer, though honesty felt dangerous in the intimate atmosphere of the restaurant. "I'm happy with my professional growth," I said carefully. "I'm happy with the person I'm becoming. Whether those things are compatible with my marriage remains to be seen." "That's not really an answer. It's the only answer I can give right now." Marcus nodded, accepting my deflection without pushing for greater disclosure. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, both of us recognizing that we'd approached the edge of appropriate professional conversation. "I should probably head home," I said finally, though I was reluctant to end the evening. "Of course. Thank you for dinner and for agreeing to take on the expanded responsibilities." As Marcus walked me to my car, I found myself hyper-aware of his proximity, the easy way we moved together, the comfort of his presence. When we reached my car, he paused with his hand on the door handle. "Natalie," he said quietly, "I want you to know that whatever complications this new role creates, personally or professionally, I'm committed to supporting your success, even if supporting my success creates problems for you, especially that." The comment felt like a promise, though I wasn't entirely sure what he was promising. As I drove home through Portland's quiet Tuesday night streets, I replayed our conversation and wondered what I was getting myself into. Connor was still out when I arrived home, giving me time to process the evening without having to navigate his questions or reactions. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in our living room, thinking about trajectories and possibilities, and the growing distance between the life I was living and the one I was building. Connor came home after midnight, slightly drunk and ebullient with celebration. He found me reading in bed, and immediately began describing his evening with Tyler and the other newly promoted executives. "Rodriguez really went all out," he said, loosening his tie with the careful precision of someone managing alcohol consumption. Private room at Pozzo, wine selection that probably cost more than most people's car payments, speeches about the future of the company. Sounds like a proper celebration. It was, and Nat, Connor sat on the edge of our bed, his expression more serious despite the alcohol. Rodriguez made a point of mentioning how impressed he was with your performance during the interview, said hiring you was one of his best decisions. That's nice to hear. It's more than nice. It means your success is contributing to mine, which is how partnerships should work. The comment revealed more about Connor's perspective than I think he intended. My value to him was increasingly measured by my utility to his advancement, rather than my independent worth. How was your dinner with him? Connor asked, beginning to undress for bed. We discussed the details of my expanded role. Expanded how? I explained the new responsibilities Marcus had outlined, watching Connor's expression shift from satisfaction to something more complicated as he processed the implication. So you'll essentially be running Portland operations when I'm traveling, he said finally, in collaboration with the existing team. Yes, that's significant. It is. Are you comfortable with that arrangement? Connor was quiet for a moment, and I could see him working through the professional and personal ramifications. I'm comfortable with you having authority that reflects your abilities, he said finally. I'm less comfortable with the optics of my wife replacing me in business context. I wouldn't be replacing you. I'd be covering specific responsibilities during your absence, which amounts to the same thing from the outside. People will see my wife making decisions I would normally make, managing relationships I've built, representing perspectives I've developed. And that bothers you. It bothers me that people might think I need my wife to do my job properly. The insecurity in Connor's voice was familiar but also frustrating. Even his professional success couldn't eliminate his need to feel superior and or they might think you're smart enough to marry someone capable of handling significant responsibility, I said. Connor considered this alternative interpretation, and I could see him trying to reframe the situation in terms that preserved his ego. You're right, he said finally. Having a wife who can represent the company effectively is an asset, not a liability. Exactly. We settled into bed with our respective thoughts, both of us recognizing that the new professional arrangements would test our marriage in ways we couldn't fully anticipate. The next few weeks brought intensive training for my expanded role. Marcus introduced me to key clients, walked me through strategic decision-making processes, and provided access to financial information and development plans that gave me genuine insight into Rodriguez Holdings' operation. The Riverside Development Project will be your first major test, he explained during one of our planning sessions. The clients are demanding, the timeline is aggressive, and the profit margins are slim. If you can manage that successfully, you can handle anything we might encounter. The Riverside project involved converting an old warehouse into luxury condominiums, while maintaining historical character and environmental sustainability. The clients were an investment group with strong opinions about everything from paint colors to parking arrangement. They've been difficult for Connor to manage, Marcus admitted, very specific about their expectations, resistant to creative suggestions, prone to changing requirements mid-project. And you want me to take over the relation? I want you to demonstrate that your approach to client management might be more effective than traditional methods. The challenge was intimidating and exciting. Success would prove my capability at the highest levels of the company, while failure would validate every doubt about my qualifications and readiness. I threw myself into preparing for the Riverside project with intensity that surprised even me. I studied every detail of the development plans, researched comparable projects in other markets, and developed strategic approaches for managing client expectations, while maintaining creative integrity. Connor's first business trip under the new arrangement was scheduled for the following week, a 5-day swing through California to develop relationships with potential investors. The timing would provide an immediate test of my ability to manage significant responsibility without his oversight or support. Are you nervous? Connor asked as he packed for the trip. More excited than nervous. This is exactly the kind of challenge I've been wanting. And if something goes wrong while I'm gone, then I'll handle it. That's what you hired me for. Connor paused in his packing to look at me directly. We hired you, Nat. This is still a team effort. Of course. I just meant that you can travel with confidence knowing things will be managed properly in your absence. By my wife. By your partner. The distinction felt important, though I wasn't sure Connor fully appreciated the difference. Monday morning of Connor's first trip brought the kind of crisp November weather that makes Portland feel both invigorating and melancholy. I arrived at the office early, wanting to establish my presence before the regular staff arrived and begin demonstrating the authority Marcus had entrusted to me. The Riverside client meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock, and I'd prepared presentation materials that balanced their specific requirements with creative solutions that would enhance the project's market appeal. "Ready for your first major test?" Marcus asked, appearing at my office door with coffee and an expression of confident support. "As ready as I can be. The client's expectations are clear, and I have solutions that should address their concerns while improving the overall project." "I'm sure you do." But Marcus's expression grew more serious. "Remember that you don't have to prove yourself to these people. You just have to solve their problems effectively." The client meeting exceeded my expectations in every way. The investment group, led by a sharp woman named Catherine Wells, responded positively to my strategic approach and creative suggestion. Rather than the resistance Connor had encountered, I found them eager to collaborate on solutions that would enhance both the project's character and its profitability. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we needed," Catherine said, as we reviewed my revised development plan. "You've addressed our concerns while identifying opportunities we hadn't considered. The key is balancing historical preservation with modern functionality," I explained. "Residents want contemporary amenities, but they're choosing this building because of its unique character, and you understand how to deliver both. I understand how to find creative solutions that serve multiple objectives simultaneously." By the end of the meeting, we'd resolved several issues that had been stalling the project for weeks and identified new possibilities for enhancing the development's appeal to potential buyers. "Impressive work," Marcus said as the clients departed. "They were more engaged and collaborative than I've seen them in months. They just needed someone to listen to their actual concerns rather than trying to convince them their concerns were wrong." Is that what Connor was doing? Connor was defending his original vision instead of adapting to new information. Sometimes flexibility is more important than consistency. The observation was accurate but felt disloyal to voice. Connor had good instincts and strategic thinking, but he also had ego investments that could interfere with effective problem-solving. The rest of the week brought a series of challenges that tested my decision-making authority and strategic judgment. A contractor discovered structural issues that required expensive remediation. A permit delay threatened to push back our timeline by several weeks. A neighboring property owner raised concerns about construction noise and dust. Each problem required quick thinking, collaborative solutions, and the confidence to make decisions without extensive consultation or approval. I found myself energized rather than overwhelmed by the complexity, approaching each challenge as an opportunity to demonstrate competence rather than a threat to be managed. "You're handling this beautifully," Marcus observed on Thursday as we reviewed the week's development. "Every problem you've solved, every decision you've made, it's been exactly what the situation required." "Thank you. It feels good to have authority that matches responsibility." "How does it feel to be making decisions Connor would normally make?" The question was more personal than professional, touching on dynamics I'd been avoiding examining too closely. "It feels like this is work I should have been doing all along," I said honestly. "And that doesn't create conflict for you?" Stepping into his role, potentially outperforming him in contexts where he's been struggling. "It creates awareness that maybe my talents have been underutilized." Marcus was quiet for a moment, and I could see him considering his next words carefully. "Natalie, can I tell you something? The client's response to you this week, the way you've handled every challenge, it's been remarkable. You have instincts for this work that can't be taught." "Thank you. I'm not just complimenting your performance. I'm telling you that you're naturally gifted at executive leadership in ways that suggest you could be running your own company rather than supporting someone else's career." The comment hit like a revelation. In focusing on proving myself within existing structures, I'd never seriously considered whether those structures were the right fit for my ambitions and abilities. Are you suggesting I should consider starting my own firm? I'm suggesting you should consider what you really want rather than what seems safest or most acceptable. That evening, Connor called from Los Angeles to check on the week's development. I briefed him on the Riverside project's success, the various challenges that had emerged, and the solutions I'd implemented. Sounds like you handled everything perfectly, he said, though I detected something strained in his tone. The clients were very responsive once we reframed the discussion around collaboration rather than compliance. Meaning they wanted to be heard rather than just accommodated. Once I understood their actual concerns, finding solutions became much easier. Connor was quiet for a moment. And they preferred your approach to mine. They preferred an approach that addressed their needs more directly. Which wasn't my approach. Connor, this isn't about comparing our methods. It's about finding what works best for each situation. Of course. Connor's voice carried forced lightness. I'm glad everything went smoothly. I'll be back Sunday night, and we can review everything in detail. After hanging up, I sat in our quiet house thinking about the week's successes and their implications. I'd proven myself capable of executive-level responsibility, but I'd also highlighted deficiencies in Connor's approach that might threaten his confidence and our relationship dynamic. Friday brought the week's final test, a presentation to potential investors who were considering funding the next phase of Rodriguez Holdings' expansion. Marcus had originally planned to handle the presentation himself, but a family emergency required him to travel to California unexpectedly. I know it's short notice, he said, calling me from the airport. But you understand the expansion strategy better than anyone except me, and your performance this week proves you can handle high-stakes presentations. I'll handle it, I said, feeling nervous excitement rather than panic. I know you will. And Natalie, this is your moment to show everyone exactly what you're capable of. The investor presentation went flawless. I walked the group through Rodriguez Holdings' strategic vision, demonstrated our track record of successful developments, and outlined the financial projections that made the expansion attractive from an investment perspective. Your strategic thinking is impressive, said Robert Chen, the lead investor. You clearly understand both the creative and financial aspects of development work. Thank you. Success in this industry requires balancing aesthetic vision with market reality, and you seem to understand that balance exceptionally well. By the presentation's end, the investors had committed to funding the expansion and specifically requested to work with me on future project development. We'd like you to be our primary contact for this partnership, said Jennifer Martinez, another key investor. Your communication style and strategic approach give us confidence in the collaboration. As I walked the investors to their cars, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from work that exceeds expectations while serving meaningful objectives. I'd successfully represented Rodriguez Holdings at the highest levels and secured funding that would enable significant company growth. Marcus called that evening from California to debrief the presentation. Robert Chen called me an hour ago, he said, his voice carrying obvious satisfaction. He said you gave one of the most impressive presentations he's seen from a development company. They're not just funding the expansion, they're asking for you specifically to manage the partnership. That's wonderful news. It's more than wonderful, Natalie. It's career-defining. You've just established yourself as a senior executive in this industry. Thank you for trusting me with the opportunity. Thank you for proving that my trust was justified. As we spoke, I realized that the week had fundamentally changed my professional identity and future possibilities. I was no longer Connor's talented wife who happened to work for his company. I was a proven executive with independent credibility and strategic authority. The transformation felt both thrilling and terrifying, especially as I considered how Connor would react to my success and what it might mean for our marriage. Connor returned Sunday evening with gifts from Los Angeles and stories about potential West Coast partnerships. His trip had been successful, generating several promising leads for future business development. Sounds like you had an eventful week too, he said as I described the investor presentation and partnership agreement. Very eventful. The clients were impressed with the strategic approach, and Marcus was pleased with the funding and they specifically requested to work with you going forward. They appreciated the communication style and felt confident about the collaboration. Connor was quiet for a moment, and I could see him processing the implications of my week's accomplishments. That's incredible, Ned. Really impressive. Thank you. How does it feel to have that kind of recognition, to be seen as a leader rather than a support person? The question felt loaded with Connor's own insecurities about our shifting professional dynamic. It feels like I'm finally doing work that matches my abilities, and that's what you want, to be the primary contact. The decision maker, the person clients specifically request. I want to do meaningful work that challenges me intellectually and contributes to important outcomes. If that means being a primary contact, then yes. Connor nodded slowly, but I could see him struggling with the reality of my independent success. What happens when my travel schedule increases next quarter? Will you be handling more client relationships, making more strategic decisions, representing the company in more high-profile contexts? Probably. And you're comfortable with that level of responsibility. I'm excited about, even if it means outshining me in professional contexts, where I used to be the primary contact. The question revealed the heart of Connor's discomfort. My success wasn't threatening in abstract terms, but it became problematic when it highlighted his limitations or replaced his authority. Connor, your success and mine aren't mutually exclusive. The company benefits when both of us perform at high levels. Does it benefit when one of us performs at high levels while the other becomes redundant? You're not redundant. You're developing West Coast partnerships while I'm managing Portland operations. We're covering more territory together than either of us could handle alone, but we're not equal partners anymore, are we? You're handling the high-profile client relationships while I'm developing prospects. You're making strategic decisions while I'm implementing plans someone else creates. The observation was perceptive and painful. Connor had accurately identified that our professional roles were diverging in ways that emphasized my growing authority and his relative limitation. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I want to understand what this means for us, professionally and personally. It means we're both succeeding in ways that utilize our individual strengths. It means you're succeeding in ways that diminish my importance. The honesty was startling and created an opening for the kind of direct conversation we'd been avoiding. Connor, your importance to me isn't based on professional superiority. I don't need you to be more successful than me to value our relationship, but I might need that to feel good about myself. The admission revealed vulnerability. Connor rarely allowed himself to show, and I felt simultaneous compassion and frustration with his insecurity. Then maybe that's something we need to work on together, or maybe it's something that makes us fundamentally incompatible. The possibility hung between us like a challenge neither of us seemed ready to address directly. We spent the rest of the evening in careful conversation about practical matters, both of us recognizing that we'd identified a fundamental tension in our relationship that couldn't be easily resolved. Monday morning brought news that would accelerate everything. Marcus returned from California with an unexpected proposition that would test every assumption about my professional future and personal choices. I've been offered a partnership opportunity in San Francisco, he announced during our morning meeting. A luxury development project that would require relocating for at least 2 years. My heart sank. Are you accepting? That depends on several factors, including whether my key team members would be willing to relocate with me. Key team members? Marcus met my eyes direct. You specifically. The investors were so impressed with your presentation that they want you to oversee the creative and strategic aspects of the San Francisco project. The offer was everything I'd ever dreamed of professionally. Executive authority, creative control, and the opportunity to work on projects that would define my career. It was also a decision that would fundamentally alter every aspect of my life. What about Connor? What about Rodriguez Holdings' Portland operations? Connor could continue managing West Coast development from Portland, or he could relocate as well. The partnership would provide opportunities for both of you if you're interested. And if we're, then I'd understand, and we'd find other arrangements. But Natalie, opportunities like this don't come along often. This would establish you as a major player in luxury development, with full creative authority and strategic control over projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As Marcus outlined the details of the San Francisco opportunity, I realized I was facing a choice that would determine not just my career trajectory but the entire direction of my life. The question was whether I was brave enough to reach for everything I'd always wanted, even if it meant leaving behind everything I'd always known. The San Francisco decision deadline loomed over the next 2 weeks like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Marcus had given me until the end of November to decide, which meant navigating Thanksgiving dinner with Connor's family while harboring a secret that could potentially destroy our marriage and restructure our entire lives. I spent sleepless nights weighing possibilities and consequences. The professional opportunity was extraordinary. Complete creative authority over luxury developments worth more than I'd ever imagined working with. But accepting meant choosing Marcus over Connor, San Francisco over Portland, ambition over stability. Connor noticed my distraction but attributed it to work stress rather than life-altering contemplation. "You've been quiet lately," he observed one evening as we prepared dinner together. "Everything okay with the Rodriguez project?" "Just thinking through some strategic decisions," I replied, which was technically true if woefully incomplete. "Anything I can help with?" The irony was painful. Connor was offering to help me decide whether to leave him for his boss, though he had no idea that was the actual dilemma. "I'm still processing the options," I said carefully. Tuesday morning brought an unexpected complication. Tyler Brooks stopped by my office with information that changed everything I thought I understood about Connor's promotion and our professional dynamic. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," Tyler said, closing my office door and settling into the chair across from my desk with obvious discomfort. "Tell me what?" "About Connor's promotion. About why Rodriguez really gave him the VP position." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Tyler was quiet for a moment, clearly debating whether to proceed. "Connor wasn't Rodriguez's first choice for senior VP. Hell, he wasn't even his second choice. Then why did he get the promotion?" "Because Rodriguez wanted you to have expanded authority. And promoting Connor was the easiest way to create that opportunity without causing internal drama." The revelation hit like ice water. "You're saying Marcus promoted my husband to give me more responsibility?" "I'm saying Rodriguez recognized your talents months ago and has been strategically positioning you for advancement ever since. The foundation project, the client relationship management, the investor presentations, it's all been preparation for bigger things." "How do you know that?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "Because Rodriguez offered me the VP position first. When I turned it down to stay in Los Angeles, he offered it to David Kim. When David declined because his wife wouldn't relocate, Rodriguez offered it to Connor. And Connor doesn't know that. Connor thinks he earned the promotion through merit and interview performance." Rodriguez saw no reason to correct that assumption. I sat in stunned silence, processing the implications of Tyler's revelation. My husband's career advancement had been orchestrated to serve my professional development, which meant Marcus had been planning my trajectory for months, while allowing both Connor and me to believe we were navigating our own paths. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. "Because Connor's been bragging about how his success is elevating your career, and I thought you should know the truth. Also because," Tyler hesitated, "because Rodriguez is planning something bigger, isn't he? Something that involves you specifically." The San Francisco opportunity suddenly felt less like an unexpected proposition and more like the culmination of a carefully orchestrated strategy. "I can't discuss confidential business matters," I said diplomatically. "You don't have to. Your expression just told me everything I needed to know." Tyler stood to leave, then paused at my door. "For what it's worth, Nat, you deserve whatever opportunities come your way. Just make sure you're making decisions based on what you actually want, not what someone else has planned for you." After Tyler left, I sat in my office staring out at the Portland skyline and wondering how much of my recent professional success had been authentic achievement versus strategic manipulation. Had I truly impressed clients and investors, or had Marcus positioned me for success in ways that guaranteed positive outcome? The questions consumed my thoughts for the rest of the day, making concentration impossible and turning every interaction with Marcus into an exercise in second-guessing motivations and interpretations. That evening, Connor came home with news that complicated everything further. "Rodriguez wants to send me to Chicago next week," he announced, loosening his tie with the satisfied expression of someone whose importance had been validated. "Apparently there's a development opportunity there, that requires someone with my strategic thinking and client management skill. That's wonderful, I said, though Tyler's revelation had stripped the triumph of its innocence. It's a big project, Nat. Potentially worth tens of millions in revenue if we can secure the partnership. I'm sure you'll handle it brilliantly. Connor paused in his enthusiastic description of the Chicago opportunity. You seem distracted. Everything okay? Just tired. It's been a long day. Well, get some rest. Because when I get back from Chicago, I want to celebrate properly. This promotion, your expanded role, our professional partnership, everything's finally coming together the way it should. That night I lay awake thinking about orchestration and autonomy, about the difference between earning success and being positioned for it. By morning I'd made a decision that would clarify everything. I called Marcus's assistant and requested a private meeting for that afternoon. Of course, Claire replied. Should I block his calendar for a specific duration? An hour should be sufficient. At 3 o'clock, I sat across from Marcus in his office with questions that demanded honest answers. I need to ask you something directly. I began without preamble. How much of my recent success has been authentic, and how much has been strategically arranged? Marcus's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in his eyes that might have been resignation or relief. What prompted that question? Tyler Brooks told me that Connor wasn't your first choice for the VP promotion, or your second choice. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him deciding how much truth to reveal. Tyler's correct, he said finally. Connor received the promotion because it created opportunities for you. So, my expanded authority, my client relationships, my strategic responsibilities. None of it was earned through merit. All of it was earned through merit, Natalie. I simply created circumstances that allowed your abilities to be recognized and utilized properly. By manipulating company decisions and promotion processes. By ensuring that talent was matched with appropriate opportunities, rather than being wasted in subordinate roles. The distinction felt important, but didn't entirely assuage my sense of having been maneuvered rather than genuinely chosen. What about the San Francisco project? Is that authentic, or is it another strategic arrangement? Marcus met my eyes directly. The San Francisco opportunity is completely legitimate. The investors specifically requested you based on your presentation and strategic thinking. But yes, I encouraged them to structure the partnership in ways that would maximize your authority and creative control. Because you want me there, because you deserve to be there, or because you want me with you specifically. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. The admission hung between us, honest and loaded with implications we'd been dancing around for months. Marcus, I need to understand what you're really offering. Is this a professional opportunity that happens to involve relocation, or is it a personal invitation disguised as business? It's a professional opportunity that would allow us to work together without the complications of your marriage and my employee relationship creating conflicts of interest. And personally, I think we have something worth exploring, but only if that's what you want, independent of professional considerations. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or strategic positioning. Instead, I saw genuine vulnerability and the kind of honesty that felt rare in my recent experience. What happens if I say no to San Francisco? Then you continue building an extraordinary career in Portland, and I respect your decision completely. And if I say yes, then we find out what's possible when two people support each other's ambitions instead of competing with them. That evening, I drove home through Portland's November drizzle, thinking about choices and consequences, and the difference between settling for good enough and reaching for extraordinary. Connor was packing for his Chicago trip when I arrived, his mood buoyant with professional excitement. I've been thinking about our future, he said as he folded shirts with military precision. This promotion, your expanded role, the opportunities we're both creating. It feels like we're finally building the life we always talked about. Does it? Absolutely. Equal partners, mutual success. Both of us contributing to something bigger than ourselves. I watched my husband pack for a trip that had been designed to advance my career rather than his. and realized that our entire relationship had become built on misconceptions and strategic arrangements rather than genuine partnership. Connor, can I ask you something? Do you think I would have gotten these opportunities on my own merit, without being married to you? Connor paused in his packing. Of course. You're incredibly talented, Nat. Rodriguez recognized that immediately. But do you think he would have recognized it if I weren't your wife? If I were just another freelance designer pitching foundation work? Connor considered the question with more seriousness than I'd expected. Honestly, I think your connection to me got you in the door, but your abilities kept you in the room. The clients respond to you because you're good at what you do, not because of who you're married to. And that doesn't bother you, that your wife might be more naturally suited to client relationship management than you are. It bothers me sometimes, Connor admitted, but it also makes me proud. I married someone extraordinary, even if it took me a while to fully appreciate what that meant. His honesty was touching and painful, because it came too late to change the fundamental dynamics that had shaped our relationship. What if someone offered you an incredible opportunity that required relocating? I asked carefully. Something that would define your career but might complicate our marriage. I'd want to discuss it with you. Make sure we were making decisions together rather than separately. And if discussing it revealed that we wanted different things, that our ambitions were pulling us in different directions. Connor closed his suitcase and sat on the edge of our bed, giving me his full attention for the first time in the conversation. Then we'd have to decide what mattered more, our individual ambitions, or our relationship. And which would you choose? I'd want to find a way to honor both. But if I had to choose, Connor was quiet for a moment. I'd choose the relation, because success without someone to share it with feels hollow. Even if that someone was holding you back from your full potential. Are you holding me back, Nat? The question forced me to examine our dynamic with uncomfortable honesty. Was I holding Connor back? Or was he holding me back? Or were we simply incompatible in ways that made mutual support impossible? I don't know, I said finally. But I think we might be holding each other back from becoming who we're supposed to be. Connor studied my face with growing concern. Are you trying to tell me something specific? I'm trying to understand what we really want from our marriage, and whether those things are compatible. And what do you want? I want to feel valued for who I am, rather than who I can be for someone else's benefit. I want to pursue opportunities without worrying about how they affect someone else's ego. I want to build something meaningful rather than just maintaining something comfortable. And you don't think you can have those things with me? I don't know. Can I? Connor was quiet for a long time, and I could see him processing implications he'd been avoiding. There's someone else, isn't there? He asked finally. There's an opportunity that would fundamentally change my life. Involving Rodriguez. Involving a career that would utilize my full potential. With him. Potentially. Connor nodded slowly, and I saw resignation replace surprise in his expression. When do you need to decide? Soon. And you've already decided. Haven't? I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and realized that our marriage had been over for months. We'd been maintaining the appearance of partnership while growing apart in fundamental ways. I think so. Then I guess there's nothing left to discuss. Connor's trip to Chicago provided a week of breathing space while I finalized my decision and prepared for the conversation that would end our marriage. I met with divorce attorneys, researched San Francisco housing options, and began the emotional work of disentangling a shared life. The most difficult part wasn't the practical logistics, but the grief of recognizing that Connor and I had never been truly compatible. We'd built our relationship on his need to feel superior, and my willingness to be diminished, which was sustainable only as long as I accepted those dynamics. Marcus and I met for coffee on Thursday to discuss the San Francisco timeline and logistics. Have you made your decision? He asked as we settled into a quiet corner of a Pearl District cafe. Yes, I'm accepting the opportunity. And Con will be receiving divorce papers when he returns from Chicago. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Are you sure this is what you want? I don't want you to feel like you're choosing between your marriage and your career. I'm not choosing between them. I'm choosing myself for the first time in years, and that includes choosing to work with me in San Francisco. It includes choosing to build a life based on what I want, rather than what's expected of me. Friday brought Connor's return from Chicago, and the conversation that would officially end our marriage. He arrived home with gifts and stories about successful client meetings, his mood celebratory until he saw the legal documents spread across our dining table. I see you've made your decision, he said, setting down his suitcase with deliberate care. The papers are straightforward. I'm not seeking alimony, and we can divide assets equitably. Connor sat across from me at the table where we'd shared hundreds of meals, and reviewed the documents that would dissolve our legal partnership. San Francisco? He asked, reading the address I'd listed as my intended residence. Yes. With for Rodriguez Holdings' new development partnership, is there a difference? There might be. I'm willing to find out. Connor signed the papers without argument or dramatic gestures. His acceptance as businesslike as our marriage had become. For what it's worth, he said as he capped the pen, I think you're making the right choice, not for us, but for you. Thank you. I hope he appreciates what he's getting. I hope I appreciate what I'm getting. 3 weeks later, I stood in my new San Francisco apartment, overlooking the bay, surrounded by boxes and possibility. The luxury development project was everything Marcus had promised: creative control, strategic authority, and the opportunity to design communities that would shape how people lived and worked. Marcus had been careful to maintain professional boundaries during the transition, allowing me to establish my new life independently before exploring personal connection. But the chemistry between us was undeniable, and the ease of our collaboration suggested that professional partnership and personal compatibility weren't mutually exclusive. How does it feel to be officially a San Francisco resident? He asked as we reviewed project timelines in my new office, overlooking the financial district. Like I'm finally living the life I was meant to have. No regrets about Portland, about Connor, sadness about how things ended, but no regrets about the choice to leave. And any regrets about taking a professional relationship in a personal direction? I considered the question while studying Marcus's expression. The attraction between us was real, but so was the mutual respect and shared vision that made our collaboration so effective. Ask me again in 6 months, I said, when we've established whether we work as well personally as we do professionally. Fair enough. 6 months later, the answer was clear. Marcus and I had built something extraordinary together, professionally and personally. The San Francisco development projects were succeeding beyond projections. My role as creative director had evolved into partnership-level authority, and our relationship had developed into the kind of supportive collaboration I'd never experienced in marriage. The contrast with my life in Portland was stark. Instead of managing someone else's ego, I was building my own confidence. Instead of minimizing my ambitions, I was pursuing opportunities that stretched my capability. Instead of apologizing for taking up space, I was claiming the authority I'd earned. The official divorce from Connor was finalized on a Tuesday in March, exactly 1 year after I'd started working for Rodriguez Holdings. Connor had moved to Seattle to manage Northwest Development for a competing firm, and our interaction was limited to professional courtesy when our projects overlapped. He seemed genuinely happy in his new role, and I was genuinely happy for his success. We'd both needed to be released from the constraints of our marriage to discover our individual potential. The evening after the divorce papers were officially processed, Marcus and I celebrated with dinner at the same Italian restaurant where we'd first discussed our professional future. The circle felt complete and symbolic. Any regrets now? He asked as we lingered over wine and conversation. Only that it took me so long to choose myself, and choosing us was the best decision I've ever made. 2 years later, I received an invitation that would bring everything full circle. Connor was getting remarried to a woman who shared his ambitions and complemented his personality in ways I never had. The engagement party was being held at the Meridian Hotel in Portland, the same venue where Connor had once declared me too embarrassing to attend his promotion celebration. Are you going? Marcus asked when I showed him the invitation. I think I should, for closure if nothing else. Want company? Actually, yes, I'd like Connor to meet the person who helped me become who I was always supposed to be. The engagement party was elegant and warm, filled with people I recognized from our old social circle. Connor looked genuinely happy with his fiancée, Sarah, who was accomplished in her own right and clearly supportive of his ambitions. Natalie. Connor approached us during cocktail hour, his expression carrying a mixture of nervousness and genuine pleasure. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I wanted to congratulate you properly. Sarah seems wonderful. She is. We're very compatible in ways that. Connor paused, clearly trying to navigate the delicate territory of discussing our failed marriage, in ways that allow us both to be ourselves. That's the most important thing. Connor turned to Marcus with an expression of cautious respect. Marcus, thank you for the opportunities you've given Natalie. The San Francisco projects have been incredible showcases for her talent. Natalie's success is entirely her own achievement, Marcus replied diplomatically. I've just been fortunate to collaborate with her. As the evening progressed, I mingled with former colleagues and friends, receiving congratulations on my professional success and apparent personal happiness. The contrast with my previous status as Connor's diminished wife was striking and satisfying. You look different, observed Jenny Martinez, Connor's former assistant who had attended our wedding years earlier. More confident, more yourself. I feel like myself for the first time in years. It shows. Whatever you're doing in San Francisco agrees with you. Near the end of the evening, Connor found me on the hotel's terrace overlooking the city where our marriage had ended and our individual lives had begun. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. For what specifically? For making you feel like you weren't enough when the truth was that you were too much for me to handle. The admission was generous and long overdue. Thank you for saying that. I mean it, Nat. You deserved someone who celebrated your success instead of feeling threatened by it. I'm glad you found that with Marcus, and I'm glad you found someone who appreciates what you have to offer. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who had shared a life before discovering they were better suited for different partners. Are you happy? Connor asked. Genuinely happy. Are you? Getting there. Sarah challenges me to be better instead of just making me feel better about myself. That's exactly what love should do. As Marcus and I drove back to San Francisco the next day, I reflected on the journey that had brought me from Portland housewife to San Francisco executive, from Connor's diminished partner to Marcus's equal collaborator. Penny for your thoughts, Marcus said as we crossed the Bay Bridge. Just thinking about how different my life is now compared to 2 years ago. That are different. Authentically different. I'm finally living as myself instead of as someone else's version of who I should be, and that includes being with me. I reached for his hand across the center console. Especially being with you. 6 months later, Marcus proposed during a site visit to our latest development project, a sustainable luxury community that embodied everything we'd learned about creating spaces that served both individual needs and collective value. I want to build a life with you that's as thoughtful and intentional as the communities we designed together, he said as we stood on the construction site, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Yes, I said without hesitation, because the choice felt as natural as breathing. Our wedding was small and intimate, held in the gardens of our first completed San Francisco project. The guest list included colleagues who had become friends, my sister and parents who had watched my transformation with pride, and even Connor and Sarah, who had become genuinely supportive of our happiness. To Natalie and Marcus, Connor raised his glass during the reception toast, who prove that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared vision. As I looked around at the celebration of our commitment, I marveled at the journey that had brought me from feeling too ugly for a promotion party to building a life and career that exceeded every dream I'd ever dared to have. Happy, Marcus whispered as we swayed to our first dance as husband and wife. Beyond happy, complete. Any regrets about the path that brought us here? I thought about the choices and chances, the failures and discoveries, the courage it had taken to choose growth over security and authenticity over acceptance. Not a single one, I said, and meant it complete. The woman who had once been dismissed as too embarrassing for corporate events was now leading those events, designing the spaces where they happened, and partnering with someone who celebrated rather than diminished her success. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming everything you were always meant to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.